Candleheart by UmbraAurumDragon. It's been 7 years since Luffy first set out to sea. He found the One Piece and can finally return home to see Shanks. However, a chance discovery from an item he found with the One Piece allows Luffy to alter the event that forever changed him. But he has to be careful not to change the future. Ace saved. Time travel. The warlord of my channel are Claude Lefraise, Neoesker 23, Derek Dowdy, Zazu Syaz, Abdul Rauf Ali, In3WT, What_IF_Lord, Black Money _Young Leon, Garrick Russell, Ben Brownlee, Case Clark, Tristan Ward, KSGPL4YZ, Brian McKenzie. Join the channel membership if you would like to support the channel. Adios.
Hello everyone, if you're new to my channel, consider liking and subscribing. It will make me feel wonderful if you do that. Thanks. By the way, I also have another Naruto and Luffy fanfiction channel. If you are interested, link is in the description.
Candleheart Chapter 16. Where's my Nakama? You can't leave me here all alone, Chopper cried. I agree with Chopper, Nami said, crossing her arms. Every time we split up it leads to disaster. We might be back before Luffy even gets here, Robin said with a smile. If he ever gets here, Usopp yelled out. Robin hummed, nodding her head. He might have been eaten. Don't say such morbid things, Robin, Frankie sighed. I think it's a good idea to go, Jinbei stated. Luffy would want us to help his brother. Or he would want us not to interfere, Zoro said, breaking his silent train of thought. Luffy might think Sabo would want to handle this on his own. I hate to admit it, but for once I agree with the Marimo, Sanji said, lighting his cigarette. Are you sure you're just not trying to avoid someone? Usopp chuckled. Sanji gave Usopp a death glare as he blew out the smoke from his mouth. Brook interrupted the silent exchange. Yo-ho-ho-ho-ho, Luffy has always supported what we have wanted to do in the past. If Robin wants to help her revolutionary friends, I'm sure he'd let her. Everyone turned to Zoro for the final verdict. With Luffy away, he was in charge and would make the final decision. He sighed. This will be such a pain. Are you crazy? Nami and Usopp yelled out. Brook and Jinbei have good points, Zoro said in a casual tone. Can't we leave it to a vote? Usopp whimpered. If I die fighting some crazy Navy admirals, I'm going to come back and haunt you, Nami said, pointing a finger at him. Pay, at least I wouldn't have to pay back your stupid money. Nami put her hand on her chest in shock. Then her lips curled up in a smile. You'd have to bury me with the money plus all the interest you owe. Like hell, Zoro spat. You'll be dead, so you can't do anything about it. Jinbei suddenly cut in. If we are going to go, we have to leave now or we won't catch up. Let's go then, Zoro said, standing up. Brook, Robin, Frankie and Jinbei followed his lead. However, Usopp, Sanji and Nami stayed seated. One of us should stay with Chopper, Usopp began to say. And as the bravest warrior of the sea, it is obvious I am the best choice to look after him. I'm not dealing with that cross-dresser again, Sanji growled. Baka, you'll be too busy fighting to deal with him, so let's go, Zoro grumbled at him. Humph. Sanji complained. I guess if everyone is going, I may as well go too. You'd all get lost following Zoro anyway, Nami said, standing up. Hey, Zoro exclaimed. Alright then, Usopp, Chopper. You two are staying behind. Tell Luffy where we've gone if he comes back, Nami said with a wink. How will we get to you if he does come back? Usopp asked. Sakatori can hold around 5 people, just fly to us, Nami smiled. How will we know where you guys are? Chopper asked, tilting his head. I have a good idea of where they might have gone, Robin answered. If not, we all have Vivre cards of one another. You think they would go there though? Usopp asked. Wouldn't that be a stupid place to lead the Revolutionary Army? Sanji asked. Unless it's a trap, Jinbei said. Exactly, Robin smirked. The whole crew's eyes widened. You're leading us into a trap? Couldn't you have told us this before I agreed to go? Nami asked while glaring at Robin. And without Luffy, Brook sighed. We're plenty strong enough to deal with this on our own, Zoro said, rolling his eyes. Now let's go. The two groups waved goodbye to each other. One went to the docks to meet Koala. the other to the infirmary to heal the injured revolutionaries. Ace, Yumi. Look, we're here, Luffy said, jumping up and down, pointing at the island on the horizon. For the past week, the Whitebeard pirates had been having parties every night and had been telling Ace tales of the past few years he had missed. Ace had fit right back in with his family, and surprisingly Luffy had as well, joining in with all their festivities and jokes. Yumi had joined in and had come out of her shell little by little every day. She had even been given some proper clothes, and Luffy's red shirt and sash were washed and given back to him. Yumi ran up and lifted herself up onto the rail. What's there, Luffy? How am I supposed to know? I've never been there. But your crew members are there, right? Ace asked, joining them. I think so, Luffy said. I can't wait to see Jinbei again. Ace smiled. I can tease him about joining my baby brother's crew. You can meet Brook, Robin and Frankie too, Luffy said with a chuckle. I hope you haven't given them too much trouble, Luffy, Ace teased. She. The three of them stood there waiting patiently for the ship to reach the dock, two of them more patiently than the third. But Luffy noticed something as he got closer to the island. Is the town supposed to look like that? Yumi asked. Maybe Luffy has been there already, Ace teased by emphasizing the has. Luffy's smile disappeared for a second as he looked upon the wasted main town building. Parts of it were burnt and other parts just falling around in disrepair. Not many people were around, and those that were appeared cautious. I only sensed two of my nakama there, Luffy said with a tilt of his head. Maybe they went to get help, Yumi suggested. We'll find out when we get there, Ace said. I'm sure they're all fine though, Luffy. Of course they're fine, he said, walking towards the gangplank of the ship. They're my nakama. The ship slowly drifted into the bay and docked at the port. The gangplank lowered and Luffy, Ace and Yumi walked down. Luffy, Usopp, Luffy called out in return. Usopp ran up to the trio but halted to a stop when he saw Ace. His eyes widened in shock and his hands started trembling. Lulu, Luffy, you never told me Ace had an identical twin, he said with a nervous chuckle. That's because he doesn't. Luffy smiled. I'm the real deal, Usopp, Ace said. Usopp's jaw dropped open. He took a few steps back and from out of nowhere pulled out garlic, beaded pearls, a funny hat, a piece of paper with writing all over it and a silver cross. He branded it towards Ace. Get back, don't make me use these. Ace titled his head and smiled. Apparently Usopp thought Ace was undead. Please don't haunt me, he whimpered. Ace smiled, catching on. I have come from the afterlife to complete unfinished business. No, please don't hurt me, it was the Marines that killed you. Have you been looking after my little brother? Oh yes, of course. Has he caused you any trouble the past 4 years? Oh no, he's fine, Usopp said with a smile. Liar, Ace yelled out, lighting himself on fire. Usopp cringed and fell to his knees. I'm sorry, it's in my nature to lie. Ha 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 ha, Ace laughed out, unable to hold his ruse any longer. I bet he hasn't changed much since last time we met? No, Usopp whined. In fact, only a short while ago. Wait, what? He's alive, Luffy yelled out. That's impossible. Surprise, Luffy said with a huge smile. Usopp's eye twitched. Is this the thing you were doing with Shanks? Going to the afterlife? Usopp asked. Nope, just back in time. Luffy chuckled. Usopp's jaw slacked open. My apologies for freaking you out. Just couldn't resist, you know, Ace said, placing a hand on Usopp's shoulder. Ace, Yumi and Luffy walked past Usopp and into the town, leaving him to his confusion. Imagine how we felt, Marco teased from the top of the gangplank. Usopp gulped and ran after the two brothers. Luffy followed Chopper's Haki all the way back to a large building towards the center of town. He walked in to see a ton of injured people taking up every corner of the building. Doctors and nurses were rushing around helping patients. What happened here? Ace asked. Luffy's mouth dropped. He walked over to Chopper, who was listening to a patient's chest. Chopper, he exclaimed. Luffy, I'm glad you're alright, we were so worried. Why? Your Vivre card stopped moving. We were wondering if you were dead, Chopper exclaimed, catching sight. Nice to see you again, Dr. Chopper, Ace said with a smirk. You're supposed to be dead, Chopper stuttered. Ace, yet again taking advantage of the situation, leaned down and whispered, Boo. Ah! Chopper screamed, hiding behind Luffy in his normal weird manner. Ace laughed for a while before calming down. I don't think that'll ever get old, he chuckled. Chopper tilted his head in confusion. Are you a ghost? Nope, he's alive. Surprise! Luffy yelled out. But according to what I've heard, you had a punch right through your chest. It would have ruined your lungs and spinal cord. And the magma would have melted everything else. You should have died a very quick, painful death. Chopper paused for a second. Your doctor must have been amazing. I'd like to talk to him about how he healed you. Thanks, I needed to know that. Ace said, scratching the back of his head. And I guess my doctor was Trafalgar Law. Really? How? He was looking after Luffy. She. I went back in time and saved him. Luffy chuckled. Really? Chopper said, his eyes lighting up. That's so cool. Yeah, it's nice having my big brother back. Though he's not necessarily your big brother anymore. Chopper chuckled. Usopp suddenly ran in. Usopp, Chopper exclaimed. Luffy's back and he brought Ace. I know, I met them at the docks, I still can't believe it. By now people were beginning to notice the supposedly dead pirate walking and talking. Whispers were beginning to float around the room. Chopper then noticed Yumi next to him. Gah! Chopper and Yumi both exclaimed at the sight of one another. Luffy? Who's this? Chopper asked. Oh, that's Yumi. She's going to be joining us from now on. She awkwardly waved. Luffy, can't you discuss these things with us beforehand? Usopp sighed. Luffy ignored the question and looked down at Chopper. Hey Chopper, what happened here? Where is everyone? Chopper's mouth dropped. Oh yeah, I forgot. The Marines invaded the meeting and stole something. Most of the revolutionaries and the others went to get it back. Everyone's okay though, Luffy said, looking ready to beat up anyone that hurt his crew. Yeah, Robin was a bit shocked, but apart from that only a few revolutionaries got hurt. She wanted to help them, so everyone went with her. And you stayed here to tell Luffy when he arrived? Ace asked. Chopper and Usopp both nodded in response. We should follow them, Luffy. Robin thinks it may be a trap, Chopper said. Okay, let's go, Luffy said, looking slightly more serious than usual. Wait, why are you helping the revolutionaries, Luffy? Ace asked. Oh, it's because, Fire Fist Ace, someone suddenly exclaimed. It is him. The man walked up to Ace wide-eyed and jaw-slack. Do you remember me? I sold you food at a bar on the Grand Line? I'm sorry sir, my memory isn't as good as it should be, Ace said politely. Yeah, or you just don't remember because you didn't pay. A girl that looked like the man's daughter called out. How are you alive? A woman called out. You should be dead, another called. Luffy, I think we should get out of here, Usopp suggested. I agree, let's go, Luffy, Ace said. The five escaped out the back of the building and returned back to the Whitebeard pirate's ship. Hey Ace, do you want to come with us? Luffy asked. It'll be fun. I have no doubt. Ace smirked. Go where? Marco asked. To get my crew. Where are they? Marco asked, looking slightly bored. Luffy said, scratching his head. Robin thinks the Marines that they were following went to the Grand Line, Chopper voiced. Then let's go, Luffy yelled. If we can't find them, we've always got their Vivre cards, Usopp said. It'll take ages to get to the Grand Line, and we only just came from there, Marco said, sounding annoyed. We'll take Sakatori. Saka what? Marco asked. My bird, Luffy said with a chuckle. Yumi clapped her hands together in excitement. A bird can't carry my whole ship, Marco complained. Then wait here, Luffy said, tilting his head. Like hell. We lost Ace to Marines once. I'm not letting it happen again, Marco scowled. Come on Marco. One little incident and you're treating me like a child, Ace teased. You died Ace, Marco grumbled. I won't let it happen ever again, Luffy said, intensity building up in his eyes. I'm still coming, I'll fly with you. The rest of the crew can stay here, Marco said in a no arguments tone. Sounds great, I need a good fight, Ace said, rolling his shoulders. Yosh, Luffy yelled out. However, the rest of the Whitebeard crew were not quite on board with the plan. Marco, this is ridiculous, Jozu stated. We're not just going to wait here twiddling our thumbs while you and Ace go into a potentially deadly battle. Don't you trust the Pirate King and me to look after Ace? Marco asked. Of course, but then there is no reason to argue, Marco said, cutting him off. It would take too long to sail there anyway. The crew were not impressed but quietened down anyway. Luffy, seeing the argument had ended, grabbed the ebony whistle and blew hard on it. Within 10 minutes a huge black mass was visible on the horizon. "Sakutori!" Luffy yelled out, stretching out his arms. The bird came closer and closer, its huge majestic wings beating the air like drums. At 10 meters away it started flapping backwards and pushed its claws forward. It landed on the ground and waddled over to Luffy. "Shi. Long time no see, Saku-uf." Luffy grunted as the bird shoved him away and snuggled up to Yumi. Yumi giggled as the bird trilled under her petting. "You sure he's your bird, Pirate King?" Marco teased. "He says he's nobody's pet," Chopper said, looking at the bird, "and that he didn't miss the crazy pirates at all. Only the cute girl." Luffy pouted. He also wants to know where the pretty girl with orange hair is. "We're going to go to Nami now." Luffy chuckled. The bird trilled in response. "Come on Luffy, let's go," Ace said, climbing onto the bird's back. Luffy stretched out his arms and jumped on before helping Usopp and Chopper up. The bird leaned down his head between Yumi's legs and lifted her up. She giggled as she slid down the bird's neck and into Luffy's arms. "Let's go," Luffy yelled out. "Sakutori also says that he didn't miss your loudness at all," Chopper said from behind Luffy. Luffy chuckled as the bird stretched out his wings and launched into the air, followed closely by a recently transformed Blue Phoenix. The 10 warships flowed across the water. Dragon's ship was at the front of the armada whilst the Sunny was lagging behind at the back. The reason the Sunny was dragging behind was rather simple. Sanji did not want to be anywhere near the front, where Eva was. He had tried multiple times to board the Sunny, but Sanji had always used a coup de burst just in the nick of time to avoid the purple afro monster. Robin had gone to the head ship to talk with Dragon about their destination, so Sanji only had to wait on Nami. Whilst trying to ignore Zoro weightlifting and Frankie banging away below deck. Jinbei had also gone to many of the other ships to talk with their inhabitants, which had left Sanji alone to steer the ship with only Brook and his music to comfort his banging headache. The trip hadn't been too bad for Robin. She enjoyed any excuse to talk with her friends from the Revolutionary Army. She just hoped that Hancock had gotten away before the Marines had seen her. She stood next to Koala and Sabo at the front of the ship discussing different odds and ends. Sabo of course wanted to know everything Luffy had done since he had last seen him. At one point Robin saw what had looked like a giant purple puffball launch itself at the Sunny. However, each time it happened the purple mass of doom was thwarted by Frankie's coup de burst. She had to admit she was slightly enjoying Sanji's plight. Apart from that, quite a substantial amount of time passed uneventfully. Robin found it to be too quiet on Dragon's ship. She had become so used to her capways. As she looked to the horizon her thoughts turned morbid. They were heading in the exact direction she thought they would. She knew many of the men on the ships with her would die when they arrived. As if summoned by these thoughts, a man at the top of the mast yelled out. Robin looked out across the foggy water and saw 3 gleaming gold pillars rise out of the smog. The closer they got to the island the clearer they could see. The city was a-shining. Its buildings gleamed with gold and silver, tall pillars inlaid with jewels were holding up roofs and roads. The city had a giant ebony wall and a large beach leading to a huge dock where an armada of Navy warships awaited them. Candle Heart Chapter 17 Impending Doom, Goodbye Brother. Robin could hardly believe her eyes. The army that awaited them was nothing short of terrifying. The city behind the Navy only added to her fear. It was grand and beautiful, like a place where kings or gods should live. Yet it had a terrifying aurora that gave her the impression that this place was evil. She had read about its construction in the letter left behind with the One Piece. Out of all the information on it, the city's construction was something she deemed worthy of telling the Revolutionary Army about. She had suspected a trap and had told Dragon so, but she had not suspected what was about to occur. The men aboard the boats were silent with shock. The city was unlike anything they had ever seen. The stillness was interrupted by a rumbling beneath the boats. It shook the sea and caused the waves to pound against the hulls. Between the 3 tall golden pillars on the island arose a giant metal object. The men's eyes followed its slow rise high into the sky. It confused the men of the Revolutionary Army for a second before Dragon called out. "It's a weapon! Split up and get to land! Find the ship with the information we need." The rumbling was now reverberating in Robin's chest. She crossed her arms and allowed for wings to bloom from her back. She flew back to the Sunny to warn the others. She was almost there when a seam formed in the center of the giant metal object, just above a platform where men were swarming around. She watched in horror as the top section slowly folded down. Her eyes widened as she realized she was looking down the barrel of a huge golden cannon. She saw light build up at the back of the barrel. She moved as fast as she could. But the shock wave of the cannon hitting a nearby ship knocked her out and she fell into the murky water below. "Robin!" Jimbei called, jumping into the water. Within seconds he reached her and managed to drag her aboard the Sunny. "Take her to the infirmary," Zoro yelled from atop the mast. "We'll use a coup de burst a few times around the area so they can't take aim at us, and hopefully it'll confuse them so they can't hit any of the other ships." "On it," Frankie yelled out, running below deck. "Nami, can you give us and the other ships some cloud cover when we get closer to the beach?" "Sure thing, Zoro," she said, taking out her Klima tact. "Love Cook, steer us toward the shore. Brook and I will cover the ship from attacks." "All right," he called out, spinning the wheel away from a sinking warship. "Jimbei, can you help the crews of the sinking ships?" Zoro asked when Jimbei returned from below deck. Jimbei nodded and jumped overboard. The cannon fired again. Its ammo acted like a miniature bomb when it collided with the water. Any ships nearby either had half their hull breached or was tilted and pushed back from the shock wave. One revolutionary ship was down and another was badly damaged. The cannon moved to aim at Dragon's lead ship. As it built up energy, it made a loud whirring noise. It was about to fire when the Sunny shot across its path. It took Zoro's and Brook's combined force to try and stop the bomb-like ammunition from destroying the Sunny. It wasn't like any ordinary cannonball that Zoro could simply cut through. It wasn't solid and resembled a laser more than a cannonball. Consequently, the two pirates were pushed back by the shock wave. Though they had accomplished their goal, the cannon was now solely focused on the Sunny rather than the Revolutionary Army. Thus they could now make their way to shore and attack the ships at the dock. "Nami, now would be a good time for that cloud cover." Nami twirled her staff as lots of little clouds exited the end and formed together in the sky to make one giant dark storm cloud. The men manning the cannon above, on the platform, instead of powering down, fired randomly into the sea, attempting to hit anything. But the cloud had done the job. The men manning the cannon far above couldn't see anything below the dark clouds. The Sunny made it to the shore. "If they fire now they'll hit their own men," Frankie said, lowering the anchor. "I wouldn't count on that to stop them. Let's get what we need and go," Nami said. "Brook, can you stay here and look after Robin and the Sunny?" Zoro asked. "Of course," the skeleton said, taking out his sword. "I'll stay near the water. I'll do the most damage there," Jimbei stated. Zoro nodded. He placed his bandana over his head and jumped off the side of the Sunny and waded to the shore. Jimbei dived over the opposite side of the Sunny into the deeper water and swam over to the other ships so he could shoot water at Marines. Sanji jumped off and followed Zoro ashore, careful to stay on the other side of the beach to Eva. Frankie went below deck to shoot cannonballs at docked enemy ships, and Nami stayed on deck and used her Klima tact to attack large groups of reinforcements coming onto the battlefield. Zoro kept an eye out for someone decent to fight while he cut down the hordes of soldiers swarming at him. He smirked when he noticed a sword-wielding vice admiral giving some of the revolutionaries a hard time. This was going to be easy. He bent his knees and ran over towards the vice admiral. He currently had 2 swords out, but that was all he would need to defeat this foe. He crossed them together and shouted out, "Move!" to the revolutionaries before launching himself at the Marine. The Marine lifted his long sword to counter Zoro's strike. He jumped back and glared at the Marine. Maybe this wouldn't be as easy as he initially thought. He placed Watto into his mouth, crossed his swords again and circled around the Marine. "Onigiri!" he yelled out, slashing his swords out. The Marine dodged and made a twirling attack of his own that Zoro had no problem dodging. This was becoming a pain, he thought to himself. Zoro stood facing away from the Marine and waited for him to attack. When the Vice Admiral did, Zoro turned around. Rengoku Onigiri. He leapt towards the Marine and the sudden lightning-fast triple slash caused an X-shaped stream of blood to flow from the Marine's chest. He smiled. That may have been slightly overkill, He shrugged and ran off to find another opponent. "Oh," Frankie said, looking at the store cupboard. There were no barrels of cola left. He had been working on the Sunny's coup de burst to only need 1 barrel of cola to work, but with Sanji escaping Eva and distracting the super cannon, their entire store had been used up. He prayed they would not need it later on. He went to the Sunny's cannons. He had recently designed a console where he could aim and fire the cannons from. His automatic loading machine wasn't finished quite yet though, so he had to load the cannons manually. He loaded them all, then returned to the console near the window. His top priority should be that cannon. That would cause the most damage when they went to escape. He aimed it up at the joint where the cannon bent at a right angle. He fired ruthlessly at it, using anything the Sunny had. A small chunk of the cannon fell. That will keep them busy for a while, he thought with a smirk, turning the cannons to the Navy warships. Party table kick course. Sanji yelled out before jumping into the air. He landed hands down on the head of one of his opponents and spun around, rapidly kicking dozens of Marines that were in range of his legs. Once all of them were knocked out, he dismounted from atop the Marine's head and kicked him in the gut for good measure. He looked around for another opponent, using his haki to try to find someone worth fighting, when he felt something powerful rapidly approach him. He kicked off of the ground and launched himself into the air, kicking into nothing to stay afloat. Where he had just been was a large crater. A Marine captain glared up at him. "Get back down here, you coward," he yelled out. Sanji took out a cigarette and lit it. The Marine almost looked like steam was going to blow out of his nose. He jumped up to attack Sanji in the air. Just BNTER, something got in the way. "Not you," Sanji yelled out. "Go back to hell, you monster." "Oh Sanji, don't be so rude," Caroline called out. "I am helping you after all. I don't need any help from a crazy transvestite." "Well, you're getting it anyway," he called back. "Like hell," he yelled back. "You deal with this yourself," he said as he kicked his way across the battlefield. He growled, looking around across the battle. Surely not all the decent opponents were taken. He saw Jinbei on the shore water and shock waves all around him as he unleashed multiple deadly attacks against hundreds of incoming Marines. Zoro had just dealt a deadly blow to a vice admiral. Brook had left the ship's protection to Nami and had gone out to attack a captain. Sanji could see Dragon going one-on-one against Kizaru, and he could also see a lick of flame turn into an inferno somewhere on the other side of the field. He then noticed a huge purple head, staying away from that direction. He finally noticed Frankie had already destroyed a number of Navy warships in addition to the cannon. He looked up at the golden monstrosity. Who the hell had built that? He then had that question answered for him when he saw hundreds of slaves running around the cannon trying to fix the damage done to it. Monsters, he thought to himself. They had probably slaved away building this stupid city for decades, probably for the celestial dragons. He felt anger build up inside him. How many beautiful women had they enslaved and tortured? His thoughts were suddenly interrupted when something hit him and made him fall down to the earth below. Sabo wasn't normally one for revenge, nor was he normally one to lose his temper, but he was unsure when he would next get a chance like this, and it was personal. Akainu stood tall in front of him, magma dripping from his arms as he walked slowly towards Sabo. Absolute loathing filled Sabo's heart. Memories of Ace filled his mind. This man had taken away his brother and had almost taken his other one. He had scarred him more on that day than any physical scar he had. This man was a monster without mercy. He had almost taken everything away from Sabo. He wouldn't let it happen again. Never again. He would end this man's tyranny right now. Red filled up his vision as he lit himself up on fire. Akainu smirked. Today I'll add another to the set. I've already dealt with Fire Fist, today you, tomorrow the Pirate King. You won't get the opportunity, Sabo said, glaring back at him. He felt like it wasn't just his body that was on fire. The blood that was pumping through his veins felt hot. An unusual sensation for Sabo. It fueled his hate and made his muscles burn. All other emotions were gone. His only goal at the moment, take Akainu down. Then come get me, you filthy criminal. Sabo snarled and lowered his center of gravity. He spread his legs apart and lifted his fist. Fire Fist, he yelled out before flames erupted from his hand. He clenched his metal pipe with the other and jumped into the air. He pulled back his flaming hand and aimed right at Akainu's face. Akainu countered with his own fist covered in magma. Their fists collided in a huge mass of fire and magma. The heat wave knocked anyone close over. The two faced each other down, waiting for whoever would make the next move. Revolutionaries and Marines, who had been knocked down, were now getting up and running for their lives. Sabo gritted his teeth and jumped back. He had to be careful, like in the case with Ace, magma beats fire, so he had to end this quickly. Akainu began circling, a smirk still on his face. What was this jerk up to? Sabo thought to himself. He then heard something from above. He looked up and saw huge magma balls flying towards the earth. His jaw dropped. Akainu took advantage of Sabo's distraction and punched him in the gut. Blood spurted out from Sabo's mouth as he jumped back. Luckily, he had used Haki to protect himself just in time, but the blow was still painful. He spat out the remainder of the blood and wiped his mouth. His turn now. He lit his legs up on fire and flew over towards Akainu. At the last possible second, he turned his legs back to normal and infused them with Haki. The blow landed on Akainu's shoulder and it caused an inferno of fire to engulf everything around them. The ground cracked under the force of the kick. Akainu growled and went to hit Sabo's side, but he jumped off and flipped back onto the ground a few feet away. What the hell was that? Sanji grumbled, holding the bump on the back of his head. He hadn't noticed anyone was even nearby. He looked around and then noticed that something was on his coat. He looked at it for a second before it started expanding in size, engulfing his torso. He ripped off the jacket and watched as the dark green substance consumed the clothing. In seconds the jacket was gone. Sanji's jaw dropped. He then heard footsteps behind him. "Are you impressed?" the man asked in a mocking tone. Sanji snarled and turned to face the man. He was tall, thin, and his hair reminded him a little too much of Zoro's. It looked like moss and matched his dark green, almost furry clothing. He also had a long white vice admiral coat over the top. Sanji snarled. "It's the fungi fruit," he said with a smug look. "You shot me out of the air? Of course. You filthy pirates need to be taken down." "Bastard," Sanji said, standing up. His body swung slightly as he stood up straight. He lowered his gaze before spinning on his foot. "Diable Hambi," he called out before kicking out at the Marine. "Oh, look who it is," Zoro said with a smirk. He looked out across the battlefield to see Fujitora using his gravity ability to disable a horde of revolutionary soldiers. "I wanted to have a go at him," Zoro said with anticipation. He lowered his body, building up energy in his legs before he launched himself over at the Navy Admiral. Sensing him just in time, Fujitora took out his gravity blade, Raging Tiger. Zoro was suddenly flung across to the side. Horizontal gravity, he thought to himself. He grunted and stabbed his sword into the ground, using it as an anchor, to avoid getting blown away by the gravity attack. Brook had left the Sunny in Nami's capable hands and now was helping Jinbei at the shore. He used his sword to cut down any enemies that came near, but Jinbei appeared to be doing quite a good job by himself. So he started looking for the ship that had carried off the information. Whilst doing so, he saw Dragon fighting Kizaru. Bright lights and shock waves were reverberating from the encounter. Brook gulped, or he would have, if he wasn't a skeleton. Yo-ho-ho-ho, skull joke, he thought to himself as he climbed aboard the nearest ship, being careful not to interrupt the deadly battle between the two power forces. It was pretty simple to cut down any Marine in his path. On occasion he had to put a little more effort in with a captain, but he had no trouble checking and almost destroying any ship that he came across, until he got to the one he was looking for. Revolutionaries were trying to get aboard. Koala was at the front of the group trying to make her way onto the ship. "Need a hand?" Brook asked. "If you're not too busy," she called back. He coated his Shikomizu with the aurora of his soul, causing it to freeze ice solid. He swept it across the attacking Marines, knocking them all down with a single blow. The revolutionaries swarmed onto the boat looking for the stolen information. Brook joined them in the search. After about 10 minutes, Koala came out onto the deck with a letter in her hand. She jumped up and down in excitement. "All right, I'll take this back to Dragon's ship." "Brook, can you let Hack, Eva, Dragon and Sabo know we've got what we came for?" Koala said. "Of course, miss. But may I ask, can I see your panties?" Koala pouted and ran off. Brook laughed and left to go find the revolutionary leaders. Robin woke up to the sound of war. Cannons were going off, swords clashed, Battle cries were being yelled out and screams of pain were rattling Robin's earck and saw what looked like hell. Her jaw dropped. "Robin, you're okay," Nami yelled out. "What happened?" The others went out to help. "I'll go find Koala," she called out. "What happened to the cannon?" "Frankie disabled it." Robin nodded and crossed her arms. She used her ability to see everything across the battlefield. She found Brooke. "Brooke, have you seen Koala?" "Yes," she went back onto Dragon's ship. "She found the stolen information. We can retreat. I was about to tell everyone." "I'll handle it. Help the others," she told him before letting her clone disappear. She found Hack and Eva and told them what was going on. But Dragon and Sabo looked to be too busy to talk to her at the moment. She was about to look for Sanji and Zoro when she felt Nami shake her real body. "Robin," she shook. "Robin, the cannon is fixed. They can't fire though, the Marines are all mingled in with the revolutionaries." Nami's eyes held so much fear, she pointed up at the cannon. Robin looked up to it. No, they wouldn't, they couldn't. But they were. The cannon was aimed directly at the beach where the main battle was taking place. Hundreds upon hundreds of people were fighting there. "Robin, what do we do?" Nami cried. "We have no more cola for another coup de burst." Robin was too shocked to move. Some of her nakama and her friends of the Revolutionary Army were there. They couldn't survive a direct blow from that thing. What could she do? The cannon buzzed as it built up energy. Sabo was still fighting strong against Akainu. He was stronger than Fujitora, but he was sure he could take him out. One way or another. They quarreled, fire and magma mixing together to make large heat waves that destroyed the buildings near the beach. The gold was even beginning to melt off of the nearby pillars. Sabo thought the fight was going well, until he let his rage blind him. He didn't see the hit coming, his haki hadn't warned him in time. The blow hit his shoulder and knocked him to the ground. The magma melted his skin to the bone. The smell made him want to vomit. He looked down at his shoulder and could see his muscle bands and the end of his collarbone sticking out. That was going to leave another scar. He then looked up at Akainu. The man towered over him, his bulky body shadowy in the fiery light. His aurora was powerful and menacing. Sabo tried to get up, but the fleet admiral lifted his leg and kicked Sabo back onto the ground. Sabo then heard the cannon revving up again. He looked up and saw light at the end of the barrel. "Oh no," he sighed, accepting his fate. "I'm sorry, Luffy," he thought to himself. "Looks like I'm leaving you alone again. Appears Ace and I were too similar. Neither of us could beat him on our own. I'm so sorry, Luffy. I'll tell Ace you said hi. It's all up to you now, little brother." Candle Heart Chapter 18. Your late Zoro slowly made his way closer to the Marine Admiral. The gravity on him was immense, making it hard to move. When he got close enough, he slashed out his swords. Fujitora deflected the hit. The gravity released for a second and Zoro ran up to him to slice again when he heard a familiar sound. "What the hell?" Zoro exclaimed, looking up at the cannon. Fujitora looked out at Zoro with his dead eyes. "This will cause much destruction," he said, holding his sword close to his chest. "This is such a pain," Zoro grunted. "I will not let my men die," Fujitora said. "They wouldn't die if you didn't aim a cannon at them. This is not my doing, pirate hunter. Pay whatever," Zoro replied, before attempting another slice at him. "You still want to fight me?" Fujitora asked. "Are you not worried about your allies?" "They can take care of themselves just fine," he smirked. Their blades clashed, sending ringing noises across the battlefield. Fujitora's gravity occasionally caused a massive wave of force to bear down on Zoro. He dodged them when able or just used sheer muscle to avoid being blown away. By now though, not a single soul was anywhere near their intense battle, and not just because of fear. Zoro noticed that the battlefield was growing empty. Most of the revolutionaries were heading towards the ships. They must have got what they came for, he thought. Marines had followed them to the beach in attempt to kill them while they were escaping. Then Zoro noticed something. The cannon had stopped charging, and it wasn't aimed at him anymore, it was aimed at the beach where everyone was massing. Fujitora apparently noticed this as well. "I must go, swordsman, we'll finish this battle later." Zoro grunted as he watched the man go off. He guessed he should probably go help somehow. Maybe he could destroy the cannon. He looked up at it. This was such a pain, he thought before running off towards it. Yumi looked out at the water. They had been flying for so long she couldn't feel her backside anymore. At least Sakitori's feathers kept her warm in the cool crisp air. She felt gruntled and safe in front of Luffy, though she knew that she wasn't going to be so comfortable wherever she was going. Usopp and Ace were exchanging stories in whispered tones from behind her while Chopper and Luffy had fallen fast asleep ages ago. She felt her own head dip a little to the side. It felt like she had only closed her eyes for a second, but she awoke to a bright sun blaring into her eyes from the horizon. It almost looked like it was peeping over the edge of the water to have a look at the new day. "Morning, sleepyhead," Luffy exclaimed. "Morning," she replied. "Are we almost there?" she asked, looking at the boys behind her. They all shrugged in response. She rolled her eyes. She then grabbed the food satchel and handed out its contents. "Can we land somewhere soon?" she asked. "I think we all need a rest." "You'll be fine," Luffy said, patting her a little too hard on the back. "Anyway, we're in a hurry." "Ha ha 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 ha. We'll get there soon, Yumi," Ace said, chomping down on a piece of meat. "Luffy will." "Luffy will what?" she asked, looking back at him. His eyes had closed and he appeared to be snoring. "Luffy, what's wrong with Ace?" she asked, looking at him. She gasped as she noticed he had closed his eyes and was snoring too. "They're just narcoleptic, Yumi," Usopp laughed. "Yes, they're fine," Chopper agreed. Yumi let out the breath she had been holding, but her eyes widened as she looked back and saw both of them slip off Sakitori. "Usopp," she cried. He reached forward and grabbed Luffy. But no one could grab Ace at the back and he began to fall to his doom. "Stupid moldy marine," Sanji exclaimed. He had to admit though, he liked fighting this marine. He reminded him of Zoro, which made every kick to the marine's face more satisfying. He went in for another kick, but jumped back when he saw a blue carpet had formed just underneath him. He looked closer and realized they were tiny mushrooms. They spread quickly and went up onto his shoes. He flicked them off as the little blue shrooms devoured them. "Hey, you owe me a new jacket and shoes," he yelled at the marine. The marine smirked and ran at Sanji. The moldy man attempted a punch, but the cook blocked it with a hockey-infused kick. Heaven knows what would happen to his pants and skin if he tried to kick the marine without reinforcement hockey. Sanji could hear the sound of the cannon charging in the distance, but his only focus right now was the marine. A huge semicircular fungus then grew up around Sanji. He kicked his way through it, but when he did, it vaporized into spores and landed on his shirt. He ripped it off as the spores began to turn his shirt from white to moldy fruit green. "What the hell are you doing? Leave my clothes alone," he shouted. The marine, instead of replying, chucked hot pink spotty toadstools at Sanji. He dodged and jumped into the air and dealt the marine a kick. Blood began to drip down the marine's lip. Sanji smirked. He had the marine on his last leg. That was until one of the mushrooms hit his pants. Little yellow spikes began to grow out of the black material. He ripped them off too. That left only one problem. He only had one item of clothing left and he wasn't happy about it. "You'll pay for this," he grumbled. "Oh Sanji, you look wonderful. Let it all out," Eva said as she pranced past chasing some marines. Sanji lowered his head in shame and his body began to shake. He saw Zoro smirk from across the field. Now he was pissed. "Diable Hambi," he shouted out, spinning on one foot. He managed to kick the marine, but then he suddenly stopped. He felt his throat close up. He couldn't breathe. He clutched his chest. What the hell was going on? He coughed into his hand and saw different colored spores all over it. No way. Had he inhaled them? He coughed again, and wheezed as he tried to get more oxygen into his body. He heard the marine laughing. In his fading vision he could see the cannon aimed at the beach and Zoro running over to the cannon. Not like this. He couldn't die from this idiot's hand. Not half naked like this either. It would be a disgrace to the captain. He wheezed again as he felt the excruciating pain of the spores spreading throughout his lungs. "Ace!" They all screamed out as they watched helplessly as Ace fell. Sakitori dove down to catch him, but it was obvious he wouldn't make it. "Luffy! Wake up and save your brother," Usopp said, shaking Luffy, but he didn't wake up. They screamed in terror as Ace fell towards the water. But at the last possible second, a blue creature flashed out and grabbed the fireman with its talons. They all let out a sigh of relief as Marco leveled out with Ace in his claws. He gave them an Ace a bored, annoyed look. Ace then decided to wake up and noticed where he was. Hey, what happened? He asked, looking around. Marco, can you loosen your grip? You're going to rip off my arms. Marco sighed and dropped Ace back on top of Sakitori before falling in behind them again. Marco, you're so quiet, we forgot you were there. Usopp said, rubbing the back of his head. The Blue Phoenix smirked in response before suddenly pulling up. Sakitori followed suit and began to beat his wings in a backwards motion to stay still in the sky. Luffy took this opportunity to wake up and stare at their destination. A city of gold and jewels lay upon an island before them. So cool, Luffy exclaimed. Yumi couldn't move, she stared out at the city and fear overtook her. She began to shake uncontrollably. Hey Yumi, what's wrong? Luffy, you can't. You promised. Please, don't take me back there, she said, tears filling up her eyes. Luffy's jaw dropped as he realized where they were. This was the island he had picked Yumi up from in the past, where she had been a slave. Robin watched the horror that was unfolding before her eyes. Sanji and Sabo were down. Zoro had run off to destroy the cannon and all of the revolutionaries and marines were gathering in an easy target for the cannon high above them. She watched as the cannon, now full with power, aimed closer to where everyone was. In the main battlefield, all that was left was a few mangled bodies and a few stronger marines, soldiers and pirates fighting. Robin noticed Nami was in shock. She was staring down at Jinbei and Brook fighting and helping revolutionaries onto ships. Robin looked over and saw Frankie jump over the railing of the Sunny to go help. Robin's gaze was fixated on Sabo and Sanji. Neither of them were moving and Sabo appeared to have lost a lot of blood. She couldn't do anything to help them. The Sunny was all out of cola, so they couldn't fire. The barrel of the cannon was now directly facing the beach. Robin could see right down to the end where a light was building up. Everything seemed to move slower. The beam exited the barrel, but never hit its target. Something fell out of the sky and intercepted it. Marines and revolutionaries alike all let out the breath they had been holding. But their sighs turned into gasps as they realized who had intercepted the shot. Luffy, Robin said, letting out a breath of relief. A huge black bird landed on top of the wall surrounding the city. A smaller blue one landed next to it. 4 people got off the black bird, but from this distance, it was hard to see who it was. It looked like to Robin, to be Usopp, Chopper and 2 others, who looked to be a child and a man. Luffy landed next to them with a shout she had no trouble hearing. It's the Pirate King, Marines called out fearfully. Robin saw Fujitora below them try hide a smile. The other high-ranking Marines, however, did not look so impressed. Oh my gosh, Nami exclaimed. What is it, Nami? Robin asked, looking at her. Nami was looking up at the wall through binoculars. The man with Luffy, that's Ace. You're late, Zoro said with a grunt. Zoro? Luffy yelled out, what are you doing up here? Looking for the cannon. It's just there, Luffy said, pointing up. I can see that he said, seeing Ace. What the hell? He said, rubbing the back of his head. Surprise. Luffy yelled out. What is he, some sort of ghost or something? Zoro asked. Thankfully no, Chopper and Usopp both answered for him. Ace laughed and patted Zoro on the shoulder. Nice to see you again, swordsman. Luffy has told me all about your exploits recently. Yeah, it's pretty nice being the strongest swordsman, he said with a smirk. I bet, Ace replied. Oi Luffy. I think we may need to help the Love Cook and your brother. They seem to be in a pickle. Luffy stared down at the battlefield. Sanji will be fine, he pointed down. Look, he's even getting up. Oh yeah, I guess so. Hey, how am I in a pickle? Ace asked, looking around. You haven't told him? Zoro asked, lifting an eyebrow. Told him what? Zoro sighed. Never mind, go down and deal with Akainu. I'll handle the cannon. Usopp and Chopper better go see Sanji. I'll help you with that cannon, Yui, Marco said, joining the conversation. Whatever, just don't fall behind. Marco, make sure he doesn't get lost, Usopp called out. Marco chuckled as he ran off after Zoro. Come on Ace, Luffy said, grabbing his brother's arm. Time for round 2 with the magma guy, he said, jumping off the wall. Usopp, Chopper and Yumi hopped back on Sakitori and went to go help the others. Yumi gulped in fear. Luffy promised her nothing bad would happen. But that didn't take away any of her fear. She gripped Sakitori tightly as they flew down. Sanji stood up, his sheer force of will keeping him awake. He would not die when his captain was so close. He still couldn't breathe. But like hell was he just going to lie down? He attempted another kick at the marine that sent him flying. Darn it all, the marine was pretty much out. Only a few more shots and he'd be done for. He was about to kick again, when he felt something fly into his mouth. He choked but accidentally swallowed the thing. What the hell was it? He looked back to see where it came from and saw Usopp and Chopper a few meters away. It must have been medicine from Chopper. He felt his breathing come easier and he was feeling stronger. He twirled around again and planted one final kick to the marine's gut. He fell to the ground unconscious. Usopp, Chopper, thanks, he said walking up to them. Sanji, Chopper exclaimed running up to him, lie down. I don't know whether the medicine I gave you got rid of all the fungal spores. I need to get rid of them before they start a colony and kill you. I'm fine, Sanji replied, reaching down for a cigarette to remember all his clothes were gone. Sanji, where are all your clothes? Usopp asked. Sanji growled and gave him an evil look. He looked around and found a long cloak on the ground and draped it over himself. Let's go help the others, he said walking towards the shore. Can I help? He noticed a young girl standing next to Chopper. Maybe next time, kid, he said continuing his walk. But I can chase all the marines away, she said pulling on his cloak. Sanji smirked, go ahead then. The little girl squeezed her eyes shut and crossed her arms. Suddenly Sanji could hear the sound of thousands of beating wings. On the horizon he saw a swarm of what appeared to be bats. But as they got closer, they looked much bigger, with huge talons and teeth that appeared almost bat-like. Their screeching sounded like thousands of people scratching nails along a blackboard. The smell assaulted him next, like rotting flesh, and the closer the creatures got, the more details he could see of their ugly distorted faces. When they passed over the water they left a dark shadow of fear in their wake. He could hear marines scream and run away. He even began to get nervous until suddenly they disappeared. He couldn't see them. But apparently the marines still could. They were still screaming in terror and ducking from invisible creatures. The revolutionaries were looking around confused. They appeared to have not seen the beasts at all. Is this little girl doing this? Sanji asked gobsmacked. Yeah, Luffy told us she had illusionary powers. Her name is Yumi. Impressive, he said. Sanji, can you stay here with her? She can't move whilst like this. Usopp and I will go tend to the injured, Chopper said. Yeah sure, Sanji replied. The two nodded and ran off leaving Yumi and Sanji alone. What did he mean Luffy? Ace asked running behind Luffy on the battlefield. She, I'll show you, he said running faster. Luffy looked around to try find Sabo. He then felt his haki twinge weakly nearby. He saw Sabo on the ground in the distance. A Kainu was towering over him. He looked like he was about to punch Sabo in the chest. Luffy infused his legs with haki and ran as fast as he could towards them. He intercepted the punch with a haki-infused fist. Akainu took a step back. Two birds with one stone. This will be fun, he said in a tormenting tone. Ace ran up towards them. Luffy, what is? He saw Sabo on the ground. Sabo? He asked, his eyes wide. Ace? Sabo asked weakly. Fire Fist. Akainu exclaimed in shock. Surprise! Luffy yelled out. Candle Heart. Chapter 19 Brothers Fight. It's this way, Zoro yelled out. Swordsman, that way leads back down to the beach Yoi, Marco said rolling his bored eyes. Zoro skidded to a halt. Are you sure? This way Yoi, Marco said grabbing Zoro and pulling him up the stairs rather than down. So any ideas on how to destroy this thing Yoi? Cut it. Simple enough Yoi. They ran single file up the stairs. Marines were everywhere, hundreds of them running down to try to stop the two invaders, but they managed to cut them down like flies. They arrived on a landing but were stopped. Get out of the way, Zoro grunted. In front of them stood about 100 slaves blocking the stairwell. They were thin, scarred and none of them had much clothing. What are we going to do Yoi? Marco asked. We can't just cut them down like the Marines. The slaves shuffled towards them. Their faces were void of emotion and their eyes seemed like nothing more than dark empty sockets against their pasty skin. Zoro smirked. Hey Marco. I don't like that smirk Yoi. Can your phoenix form fit in here? Maybe just enough to fly Yoi, he said rubbing his chin. Why? Change forms. Zoro demanded. No, why Yoi? Just do it you stupid bird brain. Zoro said, grabbing his shoulders and shaking them. I'd rather face the zombie horde. Come on, Pineapple Head, Zoro said, gripping his hair, just change already. Marco let out a screech as blue flames burst out from his body. He increased in size and Zoro made sure he held onto his hair as the bird started to fly over the slaves. Almost all of the revolutionaries were now on the ships. Marines were still running around like mad in fear of the illusionary bats, and the Straw Hats had almost got all of the injured safely away. Sanji wasn't feeling too good though. Maybe I should have gotten Chopper to have a look at me, he thought to himself, clutching his chest. It was beginning to get harder and harder to breathe, but he needed to protect the girl. She had proven to be an invaluable distraction. But Sanji was noticed she herself wasn't looking too flash either. Her skin was turning pale and sweat was running down her neck and arms. Maybe I should pull her out of it. His thought was interrupted though by a group of Marines jumping out and attacking him. He moved between them and the girl and kicked out at any who dared come close. But his vision was going blurry again. One Marine kicked him in the side, causing him to fly a few meters to the side. He got up again, and took in a wheezy breath. Where had all these Marines come from? He looked over and noticed them swarm from the city. Reinforcements, great. They swarmed around him, shooting and attacking with swords. He fought them all off with difficulty. It would be much easier to fight if he could just breathe properly. Then he realized something. There's no more screaming. He looked over and saw the Marines were back to attacking the ships and the revolutionaries, without a hint of the frenzy they had been in just moments before. What had happened to the illusion though? He looked over to see that Yumi was gone. A shiver went down Yumi's spine. If the Marines felt even half the fear she did when she saw the bats, she was sure that she could distract them. She made sure to add every grueling detail she could remember from the creatures into her vision, from their awful shrieks to the slime dripping out of their fanged mouths. She could hear a commotion in the background, but she decided to trust Sanji to protect her and just focus on her task at hand. She was beginning to get tired though, and her head was aching. A hand gripped her shoulder and yanked her backwards. She yelped as her eyes flew open to see a familiar face. As Ace was staring down at Sabo, he felt something shatter inside of him. It's impossible, this can't be real, Sabo. His train of thought was interrupted by what sounded like a volcano spontaneously combusting. He looked over at the cause of the noise and saw that a Kainu appeared to be boiling over. His face was going through shades of ghost white, to beetroot red, to cold blue, before returning to the red color of anger. Fire Fist, he said in a low, dangerous tone. Shi. Ace looked over at Luffy to see he was enjoying every second of their confusion. A smile grew over Ace's face. Why shouldn't he be enjoying this? After all, the ASL pirates were back. Sabo couldn't keep his eyes off of Ace. Surely it was an illusion. He had seen Ace's grave himself. Had mourned for him. How could he be alive? He remembered all those years ago when he saw the newspaper reporting Ace's death. How the memories had suddenly returned. The pain of never seeing his brother again. Sabo's eyes were wide with shock and he couldn't move. What the hell had Luffy done? He was surprised to see Ace alive, but wasn't surprised at all that Luffy had organized it. He finally dragged his eyes off Ace to notice Akainu was going berserk. When his gaze returned to his brother, he saw his old smile slowly spreading from ear to ear. He had missed that smile so much. Ace and Luffy moved between him and Akainu. He realized what they were doing. No way are they showing me up, he thought. He mirrored his brother's smiles and slowly got to his feet. Sabo, Luffy said, looking back at him. I'm fine, he said, glaring out. I have to look after you too. Together then, Ace said. Yosh, I'll kick his butt, Luffy said in agreement. As if Luffy, I'll be the one to deal the final blow, Ace said. Not if I do it first, Sabo said as he moved to the left side of Luffy and lit himself up. Ace on Luffy's right side did so at the same time. Well, this is strange, Ace said, scratching the back of his head. It's awesome, Luffy said, looking at one of them then the other. We'll have to sort this out later, Sabo said. Why bother? Ace smirked, returning his gaze to Akainu. Sabo rolled his eyes. He'd figure it out when this was over. Akainu grunted and brought his arm back. Luffy bent down, grabbed his knees and pumped blood through his system. Steam began to exit his body. Second gear. Zoro could get used to this. He let out a little evil chuckle from atop Marco's back as they flew up the stairs. This is a much faster way to climb stairs. They came to a landing and Marco sat down and returned to his human form. Get off me, Yoi. Hey, turned back into a bird. No. Get off my back. We passed the slaves, now off Yoi. Come on, mush. I'm a phoenix, not a dog, baka Yoi. Rather reluctantly, Zoro got down from his piggyback perch on Marco's back. They began to climb the stairs again. Luckily there was only a few more to go before they reached the final floor. Oh, this is going to be fun. In the center of the room was a huge machine that probably powered the cannon above them. But what interested Zoro was the celestial dragon in the corner surrounded by marines. What are you idiots waiting for? Kill them, he shouted. The marines rushed towards them. Zoro smirked and took out Shisui and cut them down. Marco just kicked or punched any that came close to him. The stupid bubblehead was sweating now. He had hidden behind a group of slaves and was using them as a meat shield. Zoro walked up and grabbed his collar and threw him across the room. Zoro walked over to give him another punch only to realize he was unconscious. He returned to Marco's side to look at the engine. He cracked his neck and took out Sandai Kitetsu. Marco happily moved back to lean against the back wall. Zoro crossed his swords over his chest before slashing them outwards. Marco ducked behind him. He resheathed the swords as a line formed around the circumference of the room. They walked outside onto the balcony and Marco gave the wall a little kick and everything above them, cannon, wall, engine and all fell to the battlefield below. You don't think that'll hit anyone, do you, Yoi? Bet they'll deal with it, Zoro said, walking back down inside. The steps are this way, Yoi. I knew that, Zoro Grumman. He looked older, much older, but she could easily tell it was the same man. Fear had ingrained his face into her mind. The guard, the one who had tormented her, he was still here. Probably still tormenting other slaves. He was going to hurt her again, and Luffy was nowhere in sight. He had picked her up and was carrying her on his shoulder. Little wrench, don't think I've forgotten you, you had me demoted. Yumi looked around for Sanji. He was fighting like a demon, but he didn't look so good, and he was so far away, he was calling out for her. She yelped in pain as the man threw her to the ground. She didn't even know this S-bag's name and he was going to kill her. She bit her tongue before she could start crying. She wouldn't cry, she had learned to be tough. The man lifted his blood-stained sword above her. She didn't look away or close her eyes. She tried to manage a smile in the face of death like Luffy told her, but couldn't. The sword slowly came down, but it stopped. It took her a while to process what had happened. The man, he was, cut in half. She turned around and saw Law with his long sword leaning against his shoulder. Your stupid cat snuck onto my ship, he said, kicking the fluff ball at his feet over to her. Grumpy hissed at him before climbing into Yumi's lap. Yumi was flabbergasted. How had he gotten here? Surely he didn't just come to give her cat back. Law? Come on. Let's rescue Straw Hat Ya's cook before he suffocates. He should have rested when Tony Ya gave him medicine. How long have you been here? Yumi asked. He shrugged. Long enough. Give me my legs back. No Blackleg Ya, you'll kill yourself. I have no way to defend myself without legs. Which is why we're taking you away from the battle. My captain is still out there, with his brothers. Yes, I know, Blackleg Ya. How the hell did he even? You should know your captain by now. You have a point, Sanji said, a little disgruntled. Nami Ya will be nearby. Really? Sanji said, clapping his hands together with a smile. Sit still, Blackleg Ya. Well, maybe if you carried me more gently. They arrived at the beach where the Sunny was. Sanji. You don't look so good, Chopper yelled out, running towards them. Let's get him onto the Sunny. He's your responsibility now. I'm going. But Law, Yumi whined. You have your stupid cat. I'm going to watch the battle from the submarine, he said, boarding his own ship. Actually, we should all go, Chopper said. The only one still fighting is Luffy, Ace, Sabo and Akainu. Dragon seems to be finished fighting with Aokiji. And all the revolutionaries are safe on boats. We're just defending them from marines now. And the cannon is destroyed so we can retreat without getting shot at. Where have you been hiding, Marimo? Sanji snarled. Go eat some drugs, and put some clothes on, you stupid love cook, Zoro retorted, walking up to them with Marco at his side. Sakatori can pick up the three brothers when they're done. Nami said from the Sunny's deck, "Now hurry up and get on." Most of the Marines' ships had been damaged by Frankie, so the ships safely sailed a reasonable distance away to watch Luffy's battle unfold. "Heat haze!" Sabo yelled out as fire exited the palm of his hand and exploded towards Akainu. "Heiken!" Ace shouted as his fist turned into flame and a column of fire shot out from it. Gomu Gomu no elephant gun. Under the force of each of the brothers' attacks, the ground beneath them began to crumble. Akainu took each hit almost like it was nothing. Even with Haki and their devil fruits, Akainu was still a deadly opponent. Somewhere in the background the cannon fell to the ground, squashing hundreds of Marines. The three of them slipped into their old rhythm like one would slip into a favorite pair of socks. It was completely natural. In the ever-present gap that had been there first when Sabo was gone and then Ace had disappeared. The brothers fought like maniacs, all three of them with personal vendettas against the fleet admiral. "Your brothers have overtaken you in skill, Firefist. I wonder what that old fool Whitebeard would have said." "Shut up!" Luffy yelled out, running up to him whilst coating his arm in Haki. He planted a deadly fist to Akainu's jaw, knocking him back with an enormous shockwave. "You're a pathetic excuse of a pirate," Akainu said, launching a counter punch at Luffy's side. Luffy used Haki to deflect the blow, but his skin still turned a dark black and he was knocked back. "Luffy is the Pirate King," Sabo said, shooting fire at Akainu. Akainu countered by slapping him away. Sabo flew 10 meters away, tumbling along the ground, creating a long deep crater. "Sabo!" Ace called out. Akainu suddenly appeared behind him and kicked him in the opposite direction to Sabo. Magma burned all down Ace's side, and he winced as he felt a broken rib protruding from his side. Luffy's eyes went dark. "You three will never amount to anything. You all had pathetic teachers, trainers, parents. Filth runs through your veins." "Bastard," Luffy growled, running at Akainu with his arms pulled back. He coated his arms with Haki. "Gomu Gomu no Jet Bazooka," he yelled out. Akainu dodged the attack and launched balls of lava at Luffy, which he dodged with Kenbunshoku Haki. Sabo and Ace got up and both launched attacks of their own. But he didn't seem fazed at all. "Luffy!" Sabo yelled out, "Red Hawk." Luffy nodded. "Ace, I think I got it," he said with a smirk. The three of them all infused their fists with Haki and ran at Akainu together. "Gomu Gomu no Red Hawk, Heiken!" Ace yelled. "Heiken!" Sabo shouted at the same time. The three of them all used their ignited fists to attack Akainu. He was launched back 100 meters and landed hard on his back, his entire front burned. Ace gripped his ribs hard to stop the bleeding. Sabo did the same with his shoulder. "You two alright?" Luffy asked. "We're fine," Ace snarled. "I'm going to tear him to shreds for what he did to Pops." "That's if the ground can take it," Sabo said, looking around. Akainu slowly stood up. His body was heaving, he was covered in a red mix of blood and magma, both pouring out of him in waves. "Inagami Gurren," he said lowly. His fist expanded with magma and changed into the head of the dog. It knocked the three brothers back. But Luffy got the brunt of the attack. His old scar was reopened on the first few layers of skin, making it much larger than before. "Shinka Shiranui," Ace yelled out, launching long lances at Akainu. He dodged 3 of them, but the 4th impaled his left arm. Akainu let out a grunt before returning the attack by giving Ace an uppercut to the jaw. "You're next," he yelled out, pointing to Sabo. Sabo lowered his body weight and pulled out his pole from behind his back. He infused it with Haki and fire and attacked. His pole hit Akainu across the shoulder, dislocating it. Akainu yelled in a rage and flung out his other arm. Sabo jumped back to his brother's side. Ace took his place and kicked out at Akainu's shoulder. Akainu rolled backwards before standing up and aimed consecutive punches and lastly a kick at Ace. Ace dodged or blocked them. While he was distracted, Luffy jumped up and punched Akainu in the face. Akainu let out an explosion of magma. It spread out across the field. Ace and Luffy retreated back a few paces. Magma was now raining from the sky and bursting forth from the ground. The sound of magma hitting the seawater made a steaming, sizzling sound. Luffy glared out. "Ace, Sabo, I have a plan." Ace put his hands in his pockets and leaned back. "I'm ready to do about anything at this point." Luffy smirked. Remember when we were kids? Sabo smiled. Got it. Same, but what will we use? Ace asked. Luffy pointed over at the cannon that had broken into 2 pieces. That'll work. Ace chuckled. I'll lead him over there, then Sabo and I can swap out till Ace and I are ready, Luffy said. His 2 brothers nodded in agreement. Luffy walked up to Akainu. Filthied out before launching himself at Luffy. Luffy lifted his arm and infused it with Haki, 4th gear. He blew into his arm. Muscle balloon. His body expanded and turned almost completely black with Haki. Akainu was still running towards him. Luffy bounced up and down waiting for the right moment. Just before Akainu punched out, Luffy launched himself into the air. Gomu Gomu no Rhino Schneider. He yelled out, hitting him with his feet. Arrrrghhhh, Akainu yelled. He launched himself in the air, powered by an explosion of magma behind him, and followed Luffy. Gomu Gomu no Kong Gun. Akainu dodged the punch, and returned it with one of his own. The 2 exchanged hits in the air, one occasionally knocking the other into the ground or into huge golden buildings of the city. Within 30 seconds half the city was in ruins. Luffy led him back towards the beach where the 2 halves of the cannon were now standing upright and leaning on each other and the city gate. Sabo interjected and joined Luffy's attack. Luffy flew off towards the giant triangle at the huge gates. Where are you going, you pathetic excuse for a pirate? Are you a coward? Akainu yelled out before Sabo hit his jaw with his pole, shutting him up. Luffy chuckled as he reached Ace. Ready? Luffy asked, still bouncing up and down. Ace nodded. Luffy stood between the gates and stretched out his arms, grabbing onto the 2 sides of the broken cannon. He started bouncing backwards through the gate, his arms clicking with force. Ace moved in front of Luffy. He lit his arms on fire. Ace, kick his butt for me. I'm still not over him killing you, Luffy said with dark eyes. Ace smirked. Sure thing. Sabo, sensing they were ready, ran towards them. Akainu in a blind rage ran after him. I will not let you and your brothers escape justice again, he called out. Closer, 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 Luffy whispered. He planted his feet on the ground. Sabo suddenly jumped out of the way, and Luffy lifted his feet. Ace shot forward from the makeshift Luffy slingshot. For pops, he screamed. Akainu could not move fast enough. Ace blasted a huge hole of fire through Akainu's chest. Akainu coughed up blood. Everything was still for a second. Then Akainu fell to his knees. Blood spurted out of his fiery wound and out of his mouth. He fell flat on his face. Marines in the background began screaming, whilst the revolutionaries started cheering. Luffy wrapped an arm around each brother and they held each other up as they walked towards the beach. So Luffy, you going to explain how Ace is alive? Sabo asked. Shishishishi, nope, he said with a smile spreading from one ear to the other. Candle Heart Chapter 20 all together again. So we're here and the ships are all the way over there, Sabo stated. I'm sleepy, Luffy said, hanging off Sabo. We should get that bird to give us a lift, Ace started to say, then we can cook him for a feast. Ace, even though he'd be tasty, that's Nami's bird, Luffy whined. Any other ideas? Sabo asked. I have one, Luffy said, wrapping one of his arms around both his brothers. But then I'll need food and a nap. 4th gear still uses a lot of Haki. Luffy, no, Sabo called out. Luffy, stop, I'll find my. Luffy ignored his brother's protests and shot out his second arm towards the sunny. Before Ace or Sabo could protest more, they were flying through the air, right towards a certain sleeping figure. Again, Luffy, can you learn to aim somewhere else? Maybe when you learn directions, Marimo, Sanji jabbed. Says the baka with no legs, no clothes and a fungal infection. When I get my legs back you'll regret that, Snaregy. What the hell was that? Zoro growled, turning around. They must have really worn themselves out, Robin said with a little chuckle. Narcoleptic idiots, Nami said with a hint of fondness. The 3 brothers were lying all over each other on the Sunny's deck, snoring their heads off. Ah, Luffy, Ace, Sabo, Chopper said in utter distress. They're going to bleed out. Zoro lifted Luffy onto his back. Law grabbed Sabo and Usopp got Ace. Quick, down to the infirmary. Look at Ace's rib, and Sabo's shoulder, Chopper cried. Oi Frankie, Nami, Zoro said before heading below deck. Follow Law's submarine and the revolutionary ships out of here. As soon as those boys wake up, I want an explanation as to why a ghost is on this ship, Nami called back. He's not a ghost, Yumi said, tilting her head. Aw, you're so cute, Nami said, grabbing her and giving her a hug. Yumi stiffened up. Who is this? Robin asked, walking up to her. Some kid Luffy found. Sanji grumbled from underneath his blanket on a chair. Don't be grumpy, Sanji, Brook said, just because you've been demoted on the medical priorities list. I'm fine, he grunted, I just need my legs. Zoro and Usopp came back from downstairs. Overhearing the end of the conversation, Usopp said, hey, I'll help you put them back on. Yo ho 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 ho, I'll help too. Jinbei, Frankie and Nami went to go steer the ship whilst Usopp and Brook went to go get Sanji's legs from Law. Yumi walked downstairs to sleep. Zoro followed her example and fell back to sleep on the deck, and Robin started reading her book. They were all worried about the three brothers, causing a tense feeling in the air. Usopp and Brook returned. They were snickering under their breaths. Zoro squinted one eye open to roll it before going back to sleep. Now Sanji, Brook and I were wondering if we could borrow your legs, just for a little while? Usopp said from in the darkness of the doorway. Like hell, he yelled out. No, but you see, he said, stepping out. Now I'm Blackleg God Usopp, brave warrior of the sea and the kitchen. He said with his hands on his hips, showing of Sanji's legs on either side of his hips. The look on Sanji's face was one of pure horror. Nami Swan? Robin Schwan, I'm a big pervert and I'm not afraid to hide it, he said, running around. Yo ho 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 ho, do another impression. No, this is an atrocity to my legs, give them back right now. Usopp pulled out a fake cigarette and tried to curl his eyebrow. I'm so cool, he said in a fake Sanji voice. That's as good as Luffy's impression. Yo ho 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 ho. Let me have turn, Usopp. Alright, here you go, Usopp said, pulling off the legs and attaching them to Brook. Diable Hambi, Brook said in a mock Sanji tone. He then started to twirl like a ballerina on the spot. I do not look like that. Zoro opened his good eye and chuckled. Go back to sleep, Zoro, and while you're at it, fall into a coma. Zoro continued to chuckle. Shut up, Baka. Whoa, look at this, Brook exclaimed. Hey, that's Sanji's skywalk. Give me back my legs already. Alright, Usopp said, pulling the legs off Brook. Here you go, San. The legs suddenly jumped out of Usopp's arms and went running around the ship. Yo ho 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 ho. Come back. Usopp and Brook chased the legs across the ship. Ah! Get these off me. Nami, just stand still. Usopp yelled out, jumping at Nami. But Sanji's legs had a mind of their own. They detached themselves from Nami and hopped away, just as Usopp jumped at her. Get off me. Usopp and Brook continued their chase of the legs, until they stopped on the railing of the Sunny. Brook, be very quiet, we'll sneak up on them. MHHMM, Brook replied. The two tiptoed towards the legs and prepared to grab them. They reached forward. And the legs jumped off the side of the boat. My legs, Sanji screeched. Don't worry, Sanji. I'll save them, Brook said, jumping off the side of the boat after them. Brook, you idiot, Sanji yelled out. Usopp jumped after Brook. Look on the bright side, Sanji, Robin said, looking up from her book. You'd look very cute with bunny legs. Of course, Robin, CHW, rabbit legs, or maybe a fluffy bear. Fluffy bear, or a baby deer, Robin said with a huge smile. Usopp, Brook, you better bring my legs back or don't even bother coming back. You idiots are so lucky you found them, Sanji said, finally in one piece. You could have looked so kawaii, Robin whispered, disappointedly under her breath. I'm going to sleep, Sanji said, not hearing Robin's statement. Those three brothers are going to want a feast when they wake up, Sanji, Usopp yelled out. They'll probably recover for a few hours, so will I, he said, walking inside. Nami was steering the ship. Frankie had gone downstairs to look at the engine. Jinbei had gone to go rest. Robin, what do you think Luffy did? Nami asked. I mean about Ace? Oh, I'm sure if he'll tell us eventually. Ace died though. Do you reckon he's a ghost? No, Luffy must have found some way to find him. What if he dies again? He did lose a lot of blood. Nami put on a look of horror. At least we are here for him this time if it does happen again, Robin said, tilting her head. Nami smiled. I guess I shouldn't worry, those boys are indestructible. Exactly, Robin said. They haven't woken up yet? Nami asked Chopper. No, Ace and Luffy are looking okay, but Sabo, he lost a lot of blood, Chopper answered. Law is with them at the moment though? Usopp asked before biting into some of his dinner. Yeah, he'll take first watch over them, then it'll be my turn, Chopper said, playing with his own food. Sanji placed a drink in front of Nami. They'll be fine, he said. But Sab, Chopper began to say. We'll be fine. Zoro finished for him. There's no way any of them would die now they're together again, so just eat your meal. We have the two best doctors in the whole world on this ship. You saying that doesn't make me the least bit happy, you jerk, Chopper said bashfully. Hey Chopper, who's better, you or Law? Usopp asked. We specialize in different areas, so it's hard to say, Chopper said, rubbing his chin. I reckon our little Chopper is the best. He can cure any disease after all, Robin said. Oh, stop it, Chopper said, pulling his hat over his head. Hey, what happened to Marco? Nami asked. I saw him with you, Zoro, then he just disappeared. He's been flying above us, Sanji answered for her. Zoro nodded. All right. I'll take first watch over the ship. Law is watching the brothers, and Nami can steer the ship. He stood up. The rest of you better get some rest. They nodded and followed his directions. Shishi, food, 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 Luffy whispered, sneaking down the Sunny's hallways. His tummy was grumbling. He'd used a lot of haki. Now he needed food, or he was going to die. And where do you think you're going? Luffy froze and slowly turned around to see Ace leaning against the wall. Ace, want to help me sneak some food? Ace tilted his hat up with TW. Yeah, sure, let's do it. They snuck down the hallway. You look pretty banged up, Luffy teased. So do you, he teased back. You can meet the rest of my crew tomorrow morning. Luffy chuckled. Can't wait, he said with a smirk. Isn't Law cool too? He's dealt with you this long, he's probably lost his mind. She. They arrived at the kitchen. We had to be super sneaky, otherwise the others will wake up and get mad, Luffy said, tiptoeing across the floor. They arrived at the door and Luffy started pulling. He yanked and shoved, but it wouldn't budge. Dong it. Sanji made it indestructible, Luffy pouted. Ace walked in front of him and unlatched the door. Yosh, Luffy yelled out, jumping into the freezer. The two of them took as much as they could carry back to Luffy's room. Did you always have your own room? Ace asked, chomping down on some meat. No, Frankie recently put it in. The cyborg? That's the one, Luffy said. I can't wait to talk to Sabo again, Ace said with a smirk. Hey, why don't we all go back to Fuchsia Village and annoy Dayton? Sounds great. Hey, let's go check up on Sabo, Luffy said excitedly. Why not? Luffy stuffed the remainder of their spoils into his mouth and walked down the hall to the infirmary. They were about to walk in, but the door opened, and Law walked out. TRA guy. How's Sabo? Luffy asked. Law shut the door behind him and looked Luffy into the eye. Straw Hat Yaw, I was about to come get you. Sabo Yaw isn't doing too well. Luffy and Ace both froze. Is he okay? He's fine for now. Can we go in and see him? Luffy asked. No, you two should be resting and healing. Ignoring this, Luffy and Ace both ran past him into the infirmary. Sabo, Ace said, running to his bedside. So that all wasn't a dream, he said, coughing. Nope, Luffy said, smiling. Ace is really here. You okay, Sabo? Ace asked. Yeah, I should be just fine. I bet you're hungry, Luffy chimed in before running off. You idiot, Ace said, you could have died, says the one who did die. You were trying to one-up me, hey? I don't think I could be that reckless. Then what the hell were you doing? Sabo looked downcast. I was just kicking his butt for you. Ace took in a breath, understanding. You're just as reckless as Luffy and I. Maybe a little, he said with a coarse laugh. Ace put his hands in his pockets. You should have seen Luffy after we thought you died all those years ago. He didn't stop crying for a week. Ha 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 ha, you should have seen the expression on his face when he saw me again. Sabo chuckled. Oh yeah, what did he do? Almost suffocated me in a hug. I'm hardly surprised. Luffy never really did grow up. He does make a great pirate king though. He didn't even tell me, Ace said, grabbing the back of his hat, laughing. Really? He called me straight away. Sounded like he was practically bouncing off the walls. Ace chuckled in response. I never got to ask before, Sabo. But how are you alive? Dragon rescued me, but I lost my memories. Ace nodded, finding that an acceptable reason. Luffy then ran through the door, his arms full of food. He plonked down on the bed. Here you go, Sabo. Luffy, you've already eaten half of it. Sabo laughed. No, I didn't, Luffy replied with his mouth full of food. Both Sabo and Ace began digging into Luffy's spoils. So what are you going to do now? Sabo asked Ace. Ace leaned back against the infirmary wall. I guess I'll stay with you two for a while. After that, he shrugged. I have no idea. You can join my crew, Luffy suggested. I'll think about it. What, really? I think I'll go with Marco for a while though. Sabo nodded, makes sense. Are you done with the family reunion yet, Straw Hat Yaw? All three of you need to rest. Law was standing in the doorway. Can we stay in here? Luffy asked. No, go to bed. Come on, Luffy, Ace said, walking towards the door. See you tomorrow, Sabo. The two of them returned to Luffy's captain's room and fell straight to sleep. Straw Hat Yaw, wake up. What? Luffy sat up out of bed and looked around. It's too early, Ace grumbled. Unless you have food, go away. Fire Fist Yaw, you'll want to hear this too. Ace sat up. His hair was sticking up at odd angles. Are we under attack or something? Luffy asked. No. What is it then? Ace demanded. It's Sabo Yaw. What about Sabo? Luffy asked. He tilted his head and scratched sand out of the corner of his eye. Is he hungry? Strafut Yaw, he's dead. This better be good, Kobe. I'm retired after all. I don't like coming running to Navy HQ for just nothing. I promise it'll be the best news you've heard in years. As long as it's better than Luffy becoming Pirate King. That brat would have made a good Marine. Yes sir, but I assure you, this news you'll like. Garp and Kobe walked down the halls of Navy headquarters. They arrived at Akainu's office. I'd rather not talk to that hothead, thank you, Garp growled. Don't worry, he's not here. As a matter of fact, he's dead. What? He was killed in battle this morning. Really, I would like to say I'm sad, but Akainu and I didn't really see eye to eye. I know sir, I'm sure it'll interest you to know who killed him. Dragon? No sir. Sabo? No sir, well not really. Shanks? No sir. Kobe, just tell me already, Garp yelled. Ace. Garp blinked a few times. What kind of game are you playing, kid? I'm an admiral now sir. I don't care, why did you say Ace killed him? Kobe pulled out a newspaper and handed it to Garp. This will be going out to the public in a few hours. Garp put his hand over his eyes, trying to stop the tears that were threatening to break out, for there on the cover on the newspaper was a huge picture of all three of his grandsons facing off Akainu. The title read, Fire Fist Ace returns. Ace. Luffy grabbed Law's collar. What do you mean he's dead? Sabo's just fine. Straw Hat Yaw, he lost too much blood, I couldn't revive him. Liar. Ace yelled, standing by Luffy. No, this can't happen again, Luffy said as he grabbed his forehead and fell to his knees. Ace took a step back and sat down on the bed. Law lowered his face. I'm sorry, Straw Hat Yaw. Law gripped the side of his hat. But I was kidding, although he is still rather sick. Before Luffy could even look up, Law stepped out of the room and shut the door. That was not funny, TRA guy. Luffy ran out of the room to see Law was gone. He got us both there, Ace said. Let's get him, Luffy said, clasping his fist. Ace ran after Luffy but hesitated to cough. His hand covered his mouth, but when he brought it back, he noticed blood. How do those boys have so much energy in the morning? Nami asked, watching Ace and Luffy chasing around Law, with Law evading them with relative ease. What are they so worked up about anyway? Law told them Sabo was dead. Usopp said, taking a sip of his drink. It was my idea, he said proudly. That's mean, especially when they should be resting, Chopper groaned. I think Law has spent a little too much time with us, Robin chuckled. He's picking up some of Usopp's lying techniques. And Luffy's mischievousness, Nami added. I'm sure they'll forget all about it as soon as breakfast is ready, Sanji said, lighting a cigarette. Food? Luffy asked, drawing his attention away from Law. Give me 5 minutes, Sanji said, rolling his eyes whilst walking into the kitchen, candle heart. Chapter 21, Ace's Dilemma. Ace. Get up. Ace opened his eyes to see the image of his older, brother sitting on top of him. He rolled over, pushing Luffy off of him. Breakfast time. Luffy yelled, running off. Ace smirked, but it quickly disappeared when a stabbing pain assaulted his abdomen. What is going on? He never took more than a day or so to recover from a fight, so why did he feel so tired and cold? He never feels cold. It had been 3 days since leaving the Golden City. The revolutionaries had sailed off, trusting Chopper and Trafalgar Law to look after Sabo. Marco was still around. He tended to just perch on the mast and fly around looking bored. He had told Ace he thought he should give him some space and time with his brother. But he didn't leave. He was waiting for Ace to leave with him. But he couldn't leave Luffy and Sabo, not yet at least. The three of them hadn't been together since they were kids, and Sabo was still bedridden. Ace walked out into the hall. He crossed paths with Sanji, who had a cigarette in his mouth and was reaching for a lighter in his pocket. "Let me get that," Ace said, lifting his finger up to the cigarette. His finger produced a small flame. "Hey, thanks, want me to make you something?" "No, I'm good thanks," Ace said, walking off. Ace began to sweat. He walked around the corner and slid to the floor. Producing a flame had never been hard before. He didn't want to eat, he couldn't sleep properly. Maybe something was wrong. He walked to the infirmary. "Sabo," he greeted, walking in. "Yo," Sabo replied. Ace sat down next to his older brother and leaned back. "Feeling better?" Ace asked. "I'm fine. Chopper just insists I should stay in bed." Ace smirked. "He's a good doctor. Says the one not confined to his bed," Sabo scoffed. Ace laughed and asked what had been plaguing him. "So what's the Mara been like for you?" "Good, until a few days ago." Ace perked up. "What do you mean?" "It hasn't been working normally since you came back." Ace's mouth dropped. "Yours too? Two of the same devil fruits aren't supposed to exist at the same time. It's unnatural," Sabo said, shaking his head. "But why does yours exist? I never died." "I've been thinking about that. If we had not have gotten sick, I would have assumed they could have been an exception to the single devil fruit rule, like twin devil fruits. Are devil fruits of the same kind but different class? Like the cat zone cat types, lion or tiger?" "Yes, I thought of that too. I even potentially thought mine could have been a man-made devil fruit, seeing as I found it in Dressrosa during the time they were making them. But those were only zone type, Vegapunk hadn't made logia types." "So what do you think now?" Ace asked. "I think perhaps that you being gone for so long, just automatically reset the devil fruit." "Wouldn't Luffy's and Yumi's reset too?" "No to Luffy, yes to the girl." "Why?" "Luffy took Yumi out of her time, like he took you out of yours, but whenever Luffy went, he was still alive during that time. So there was his younger version and this time's version." "Yes, meaning there was never a long period of time when he didn't exist. But perhaps if he stayed in the time where there were two of him, he would have gotten ill like we are." "Why does this have to be so confusing?" Ace said, rubbing his temples. Sabo laughed in response. "So how do we get better?" Ace asked. "If one of us dies, I assume the other would get better," Sabo answered. Ace's eyes grew dark. "That's stupid. What will happen if we don't do anything?" "I think we'll just continue to get worse till we both die." "Then I will die. I'm not supposed to be alive." "You are," Ace said. "No way," Sabo yelled, sitting up. "Like hell I'm going to let you die." Ace began to feel like spicy hot chocolate was coursing through his veins. "Stop being so stubborn. I'm not going to let you just go and kill yourself," Sabo said, his brow becoming progressively more and more furrowed. "I can kill myself if I want to. You can't stop me." Sabo's expression relaxed. "Ace, we'll find another way to fix this. Neither of us have to die." "Have you ever heard of anyone getting rid of a devil fruit before?" "Well, no. Even if there was a way for one of us to remove our devil fruit, it would take us too long to find it. We can always No, Ace almost screamed. This reminded him way too much of what was only several days ago for him. When Luffy and the Whitebeard pirates decided to be idiots and tried to save him from the execution platform. "I will not have anyone else die because of me. Ace, the alternative is insane," Sabo tried to explain. "We don't have time, neither of us are healing properly, and although I can survive with this broken rib for a while, you can't last much longer with your injuries." "I'm fine, Ace." "No you're not," Ace said, standing up. "You really want to put Luffy through all that again? Do you know how hard he worked to get you back?" Sabo asked. "What do you mean? You weren't around." "No one was. We left Luffy alone. You have no idea what he went through. You can't leave him again, it's selfish. Luffy became stronger. Luffy was always going to be strong. But you can't die again, neither of us can. Ace leaned against the infirmary wall and lowered his head. Blood dripped down his hands from where his nails had bitten into his palms from clenching too tightly. Sabo, what's going on? Trafalgar Law asked, walking in. Nothing, the two brothers replied with a grunt. Law lifted an eyebrow but shrugged and walked out. Well, Sabo, that was a nice chat, I'll talk to you later. Ace cheekily exclaimed before running out the door. Ace, come back here, don't you dare do anything stupid. Sabo got up and limped after Ace. Ace followed Law out into the hall. Hey Law. What is it? Firefist yaw. Can you stop Sabo from following me? Why? He's supposed to stay in bed, Ace said, continuing down the hall and heading out onto the deck. Nami leant over and picked out another weed. How is it possible so many weeds could grow near her tangerine trees? Granted, she hadn't pulled any out for quite a while. She blamed Luffy, she never had enough time to do anything, since she always had to make sure he wasn't doing something stupid. This was taking forever though, and her arms were getting sore. She went and got a small shovel. This would make it tons easier. She started digging up the weeds. What the hell? Zoro exclaimed. What? Nami asked before turning around to look at a dirt-covered Zoro. He was rubbing his eye. You've put enough dirt in my eye to plant a new garden, he grumbled. Sorry, she said sweetly. He's only got one eye left, Nami. Imagine how lost he'd get if he lost that one too, Usopp chuckled, climbing down the mast. Zoro snarled at him and walked away to clean himself. Nami continued her digging. You really are spraying that everywhere, Usopp said. Nami gave him a glare. But that is perfectly what the... Ace ran out onto the deck, closely followed by Sabo. Ace jumped for the railing at the edge of the boat, but Sabo tackled him at the last second. Baka, Sabo yelled. Get off me, Ace yelled back. No, she, Luffy chuckled before jumping on top of his two brothers. Luffy, get off, they both yelled in unison. Doggy pile, Luffy yelled out with a huge smile. Hearing the commotion, the rest of the crew came out from inside. Luffy, Ace, Chopper yelled in hysterics, get off of Sabo. But we're having fun, Luffy pouted. You're the only one having fun, Luffy, Ace grumbled. What the hell is going on? Nami yelled. Ace and Sabo grunted. Ace is sick. Sabo piped up. I am not, he should be confined to the infirmary. Tattletale, Ace is sick? Luffy asked, tilting his head. They're both sick, Law said, walking onto the deck. What? Luffy asked. They both have a fever and neither of them are using their devil fruits properly. Sabo will be fine, Luffy and Sabo off and standing up. No way. Sabo grumbled. Nami rubbed her temples. She never wanted to be in the presence of these three again. Her sanity couldn't take one, let alone three. What? Luffy repeated. Ace and Sabo are sick because they both have the same devil fruit. They believe if one of them doesn't die, they will both die. What? Luffy yelled. He looked to his brothers. Sorry, Luffy, Sabo said with a weak smile. What do you mean sorry? One of us has to die, Luffy, and it's going to be me, Ace said. I told you we can work this out without anyone dying, Ace, Sabo argued. Neither of you are going to die, Luffy yelled, suddenly serious. Luffy, I'm not even supposed to be alive. No, I just got you back. Luffy choked. You don't know how hard Yumi and I worked to get you back. Sabo gave Ace an I told you so look. Ace responded with an angry glare. Baka, he thought to himself. Is there something we can do? Brook asked. Chopper can fix it, Luffy exclaimed. Luffy, I've never seen anything like this before, Chopper said sadly. But you can fix them, Luffy said. I'll help Chopper find a way, Robin said, patting Chopper's head. Chopper exhaled, thanks Robin. So until we find a cure, these two should be confined to the infirmary, Law said. Chopper agreed. This is all your fault, Ace grumbled. You shouldn't have tried to jump off the edge of the ship, Sabo huffed. Ace growled and tried to turn his head to glare at his brother, but he couldn't. Luffy, Chopper and Trafalgar Law had gone to every extent to make sure neither he nor Sabo could move. Thus, they were completely tied up and taped from head to toe, to their beds in the infirmary. If you two hadn't have been reckless, I wouldn't have to babysit you, Zoro said with a grumble from the other side of the room. Sorry Zoro, Ace said. Zoro crossed his legs and leaned back against the wall. Maybe he'll fall asleep, Ace whispered. Maybe you should go to sleep, Sabo grumbled. Ace decided to lay in wait and luckily for him, within a few hours both Zoro and Sabo fell asleep. He snickered quietly. It was time for Plan B. Plan A hadn't been so successful. Granted he hadn't properly thought it through. Even if he had made it to the water, Luffy's crew would have dived in and rescued him. And trusting Luffy, they probably had plenty of practice at it. Ace strained his body and managed to turn it into flame, enough that he could escape his bindings. Part 1 of Plan B, successful, he creeped downstairs. Surely Luffy had some sort of sea prism stone on his ship. What if they had a logia prisoner? Yep, surely he had some. He just had to find it, maybe it would be extra pointy. He rubbed his hands together with glee. He never thought he'd be so eager to die, but here he was excited at the thought. Sorry Luffy, Sabo, Marco, but it was for the best. He didn't want to break his promise to Luffy twice, but some things were more important than keeping promises. He tiptoed downstairs. Did the Sunny have a hold? He walked into what must have been Frankie's workshop. He looked around to no avail, until he found a safe. He lit his hand on fire and melted the lock. Bingo! It wasn't sharp but the sea prism stone handcuffs would do. He grabbed them and instantly felt weaker. He took them upstairs to the deck, and placed them on the ground. Now what should he do? He walked around them, tried banging himself on the head with them. But nothing really worked. It just made him feel sick. Maybe there was some sort of devil fruit ritual he could do? He glanced around and seeing no one he placed them around his neck. He had heard of some rituals from some of the islands he'd visited. He decided to try one of the simpler ones he'd heard of. He sat down cross-legged and began humming silently. This is stupid. He went back downstairs and grabbed a hammer. He very lightly tried to bang the handcuffs into a pointy shape. Nope. Maybe a little harder. Bang 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 bang. Why wouldn't they break? Oh, they're harder than diamond. Okay, Plan C. He climbed up the mast. Rope. Yep, surely he could hang himself. A bit drastic but maybe. Thump. Plan C doesn't work. He thought to himself on the deck of the Sunny. Why couldn't his body stay solid? Plan D. He heard a chuckle. What do you plan on doing next? He looked up to see Robin leaning against the door trying very hard not to laugh. Back to bed. He walked towards the door. You won't die, Ace. Ace lifted his head. What? Your heart isn't in it. You're just trying to stall time. I won't let Sabo die, but you won't let Luffy down either. Some things are more important. You have time. Why don't you just go back to your normal polite self? We can handle this, she said sweetly. No, I need to fix this now. Alright, keep up your charade. I know you won't die. What makes you say that? Even sick Logia users can make themselves solid. You may have been prepared to die all those years ago, but now that you've seen the world now, with both of your brothers alive, you won't give up so easily. Ace didn't reply, because even he knew that was the truth. Instead he walked past her, and headed back to the infirmary, slightly bummed, but not defeated. 'Cause he had Plan D, death by Nami. Before everyone woke up he creeped into Nami's room. This time he wanted to be caught in the act. He looked through the drawers, ignoring underwear and such, until he found a stash of money. Bingo. He stomped his feet. Nothing. He banged some pots together he had brought with him. Nothing. These girls sleep like logs. Well, at least Nami did. He had a feeling Robin was awake and was trying not to laugh. Defeated he began to walk outside, money in hand, when he felt a bang on the back of the head. What the hell do you think you're doing? Abort, abort. Plan D was not a good idea. Shut up, Ace growled. You look like an eggplant, Sabo laughed. Nami, you could have killed him, Chopper whined, bandaging Ace's head. He tried to steal my treasure, Nami replied without a touch of guilt. Usopp winced from the doorway. That was not a smart move, Nami's a monster. Nami turned around with a growl. I think I just came down with, get away from the infirmary disease, Usopp yeeked, before running away. Zoro, you were supposed to watch him, Nami yelled. I was asleep, he yawned. Nami's fingers twitched in a neck-choking fashion. I'll watch them tonight, Law said, clutching his forehead. Geez, these brothers, Nami complained, walking away. Room. No, Ace yelled, struggling. Law's sword came down over Ace's legs. Trafalgar, he yelled. There's Straw Hat Yaw, now he can't go anywhere. Thanks TRA guy, Luffy said from the end of Sabo's bed. All done, Chopper said, finishing tying up Ace's bandage. I'll get you a drink of water. He walked outside and Law followed him. The three brothers were now alone in the room. Luffy grabbed the edges of his hat and pulled down on them. Sorry Luffy, Ace said quietly. You're both going to be fine, Luffy said, getting up from Sabo's bed. Of course we are, Luffy, Sabo agreed. Ace stayed silent. I'm going to get some food, Luffy said, walking out. Get me some too, Luffy. Baka, Sabo scoffed. Sabo looked at his sleeping brother's form. I'm sorry Ace, he whispered, but Luffy needs you much more than he needs me. Sabo knew they were dying. He had felt himself get progressively worse and worse as the day progressed, and what he felt he could see reflected in Ace. They would die, and the rate they were deteriorating was getting faster and faster. Even though he had spent the day with Robin, Chopper and Trafalgar studying different ways to get rid of devil fruits, and calling people to see if anyone knew anything, they had found nothing. By what he could tell, he and Ace would be dead by morning. He would not lose his brother again. He took out his bag from the drawer next to him. He was the one who ate Ace's fruit. This situation was his responsibility and he knew way to die. He pulled out a devil fruit he had recently found. No one could survive eating 2 devil fruits. Except in the case of Blackbeard. But he didn't believe that would happen with him. I'm sorry Luffy, Ace, Koala, Dragon. He lifted the fruit to his mouth and took a bite of the foul fruit. Candle Heart. Chapter 22 Explosion. Luffy groggily opened one eye. Someone is yelling, Luffy. Luffy sat up straight, suddenly alert. That was Ace. He jumped up and ran to the infirmary. He slid into the room and saw Sabo convulsing on his bed. Foam was building up around his mouth and blood was escaping from his tear ducts. Sabo, he screamed, running to his brother's side. Luffy, untie me, so I can help him, Ace begged. Luffy looked over at Ace and saw how pale he looked. His face almost resembled a panda bear's with the dark circles around his eyes. Luffy unbound Ace and helped him reattach his legs, which Trafalgar had cut off earlier. Ace ran to Sabo and grabbed him just before he fell off the bed. He pinned his arms down and growled, "What the hell did you do? You said we had time." Sabo's eyes rolled to the back of his head. Luffy, grab his legs. We have to stop him from hurting himself. Luffy nodded and did what he was told. What happened? He asked. I don't know, I woke up and found him like this. We need Chopper. Chopper, they both yelled at the top of their lungs. Within minutes the little reindeer was in the room, closely followed by Robin. What happened? He gasped after seeing Sabo. We don't know, Luffy cried. Quick, roll Sabo onto his side so he doesn't choke, Chopper demanded calmly, but firmly. The two brothers rolled Sabo over, whilst Chopper went to work intubating Sabo. Luffy couldn't help but notice how hot Sabo's skin was. He grabbed Ace's arm and noticed the opposite symptom. While one of his brother's skin felt like a hot stove to touch and almost appeared to be bubbling like it couldn't quite take the heat anymore, the others reminded him of Aokiji and his cold ice. Luffy, Robin exclaimed, look at this. Luffy looked over and saw a half-eaten fruit lying on the floor, next to Sabo's bed. It was a vibrant green with a pattern of swirls covering the upper half of the cylindrical-shaped fruit. A devil fruit. What does that mean? Luffy asked. Luffy, Chopper croaked, it's rumored people who eat 2 devil fruit explode. Luffy's eyes widened and he felt like somewhere he could hear glass shattering. He looked at Sabo. His hands were burning just touching Sabo's skin. How long did he have? Will he survive this? Why did he do this? Luffy, I believe we only have till sunrise to figure this out, and by the looks of Ace, he only has that long as well, Robin said as she placed a cold cloth over Sabo's forehead. That's only a few hours, Robin. Luffy cried. Luffy, don't worry about me. Save Sabo, Ace croaked, now back in his own bed. By the looks of it, the smartest option would be to put Sabo Yaw out of his misery, Law said, walking in. It'll be almost impossible to save him, and his death would almost guarantee Fire Fist Yaw's survival. No it wouldn't, Ace growled indignantly. Neither of them are dying, TRA guy. There's nothing you can do, Straw Hat Yaw. The moment the sun rises over the ocean, Both your brothers will be dead. You have to choose whether to save one of them or neither. No, Luffy screamed. It's neither then, Ace grumbled. Luffy, this is your decision. What do we do? Robin asked. Save them both, Luffy said, crossing his arms. I'll try to bring down Sabo's fever, Chopper said, taking out a syringe. I'll do some more research, Robin said, exiting the room. I'll see if I can try to extract the fruit Sabo just ate from his stomach. But it's unlikely to work, Law sighed. Law activated his room over Sabo. This doesn't look good, Straw Hat Yaw. He's going to explode. Keep trying, Luffy begged. The rest of the crew slowly woke up and helped in any way they could. But light was building up on the eastern horizon. The brighter it got, the worse the two brothers looked. They didn't have much time left. Luffy, Sabo could explode at any second. We need to get him off the sunny, Law exclaimed. Take him out onto the deck. Bring me too, Ace said weakly. Luffy and Zoro took Ace and Sabo out on stretchers. Thankfully Sabo had stopped thrashing, but now his skin was so hot that no one could touch him. We're running out of time, Luffy yelled, looking out onto the horizon. The very edge of the sun was peeking out over the horizon. There is nothing I can do but delay the inevitable, Straw Hat Yaw, Law yelled. There must be something, he screamed. Luffy, we can't find anything, Robin said, tears welling up in her eyes. We need to kill Sabo Yaw so Fire Fist Yaw can live. No, I will not let that hang over my head, Ace said weakly. But Ace, I'm sorry Luffy, this is all my fault. You should have just left me in the past. No, Luffy choked. His vision was becoming blurry with his tears. I'm glad the three of us got to be together again, made all of this worth it, he said before his eyes slowly closed. Ace! Luffy screamed, running toward him. No Luffy, you have to stay away, Zoro said, forming a tight grip around Luffy. Ace, Sabo! He screamed as he fought against Zoro to go to his brother's sides. Law had formed a room around the two brothers whilst the rest of the crew stayed as far back as possible. Law, you have to get back too. The explosion could kill you, Chopper yelled. Law didn't have time to react before a blinding white light consumed everything. Luffy managed to get one last look at his brothers before it consumed his sight as well. As his sight slowly returned, he felt his heart shatter into a million tiny pieces. It's all my fault. Ace, Sabo, if we had just had more time to find a way to fix this. He looked out at the blazing sun, a cruel reminder that time had once again betrayed him. They were gone. Luffy, stop being so depressed, it was just our devil fruits. He felt a slap on his back. Yeah, we can just go find new ones. But it's my fault you lost them, and you almost died. Luffy said, trying to hold back his tears. Stop being such a crybaby, Luffy, Ace laughed. This just means Sabo and I can have a race to find the Mera Mera no Mi. That actually sounds like a good idea, Sabo said with a smirk. I'm still confused as to what happened. Usopp groaned from the side of the ship. Fire Fist Yaw and Sabo Yaw's devil fruits were rejecting them. It allowed me to extract them, when normally I wouldn't be able to, Law said from his seated position near the bow of the ship. So what caused the explosion then? Nami asked from the helm. The second fruit Sabo Yaw ate. I managed to extract it from his stomach, but it still exploded. So what happened to the two Mera Mera no Mi fruits? Brook asked before taking a sip of his tea. Law shrugged. One of them just melted into nothing, whereas the other one was just gone after the explosion. That'll make it more interesting to find again, Ace smirked, before passive-aggressively saying. But first, there is a certain brother I have to beat up for lying to me. Sabo rubbed the back of his head with a guilty grin before running below deck, followed closely by his two brothers. I'm glad that's over with at least, Sanji said, bringing out tea for the girls. I'm afraid with Luffy around, nothing's ever over with, Nami said using finger quotations. We'll never be bored, Robin chuckled. At least we get to see them together, where they grew up soon, Brook said excitedly. Why? Where are we going? Law asked. We're going back to Dawn Island, Nami replied. Those brothers wanted to surprise someone. Who? Law asked. I guess we'll see, Nami replied. The sun that had seemed so depressing earlier that day finally set, and a chill took its place in the cold night air. The deck of the Sunny appeared eerie with only a couple of lamps on. Luffy was on watch, looking out at the moon from on top of the Sunny's figurehead, thinking about how he might join Sabo's and Ace's game to find the Mera Mera no Mi. Even though he didn't need it, he didn't want to be left out of the chase. He was considering what he would do with the devil fruit if he found it when the sound of someone's footsteps thought. I'm leaving. What do you mean you're leaving? Luffy asked, turning around to face the person. As much as I want to stay with you, Luffy, I want to go find my devil fruit before someone else does. But you haven't even been here that long, Luffy pouted. I know, but Nami said I could borrow Sakutori for a while, besides I don't think I'm really cut out to be a pirate. Yumi replied with a lopsided grin. Sure you are, Luffy said. Nah, I'm going to travel around for a while, then I think I might start studying to become an animal tamer. Why? Luffy asked, jumping up and walking towards the little girl. It's much less stressful and animals seem to like me. Plus, I swear if I had to deal with one of your brothers almost dying again I might die. But there's nothing better than being a pirate, Luffy whined. I'll miss you too, Luffy, Yumi said with a sweet smile. By the way, when I find my devil fruit, can you look after it, Luffy? Why? Because I think you could take better care of it than I can. You're strong. You can. We'll be happy to look after it for you, Yumi, Robin said, cutting Luffy off whilst walking up the stairs to the Sunny's deck. Thanks, Robin. Shouldn't you stay till morning, Yumi? The others may want to say goodbye? Robin asked. It's okay, I'll see you all again soon. Yumi jumped onto Sakutori's back, with her grumpy cat and waved goodbye. Thanks for everything, Luffy. Bye, Yumi, Luffy yelled out. Good luck, Pirate King, she yelled out with a final wave as the giant bird disappeared into the dark night. She, Pirate King, Luffy said with a huge smile. Come on, Pirate King, Robin said with a chuckle. Bedtime, it's my turn to take watch. Night, Luffy yelled out, before running below deck to jump on Sabo's and Ace's unsuspecting, peaceful forms. They finally reached Dawn Island, everyone except for Jinbei, who decided to look after the ship. The place hadn't changed since they were last there, and Luffy couldn't help but think, it hadn't really changed since he was a kid either. With the exception of a huge black straw hat flag raised proud at the entrance of the small town. Even though the same flag was now displayed at many islands and cities, the sight of this flag in particular filled Luffy with joy. There sure are a lot of windmills here, Luffy. What's the name of this place? Zoro asked, looking around confused. We were only here a few months ago, and how could you forget the name of the town? There are hints everywhere, Sanji chaffed. No, I knew that. Zoro growled. Then why did you ask, Baka? How long has it been since you two were here? Nami asked Sabo and Ace, ignoring the two hotheads. I came and visited Deiden and Makino a few years back, Sabo replied. 3 years for me, 10 years if you include the time I was dead, Ace added. Nami massaged her temples. I hate time travel. Whilst the others were talking, all Luffy could think about was whether or not Shanks would still be here. He'd love to introduce him to Sabo, and he was sure Ace would enjoy seeing him again. Plus Shanks always had the best parties. The thought of all the meat he was going to have was already causing him to start to drool. Ew, Luffy. Are you trying to make a lake here? Nami asked. Miat, was all Luffy could reply. They finally made it to Party's bar. The crew walked through the doors to see a familiar redhead, taking a swig of sake. A huge smile erupted on Luffy's face. Shanks, Luffy yelled out, launching himself towards the man. Slightly more prepared this time since their last encounter, Shanks managed to grab Luffy's face before he crashed into him. Hey Luffy, he said with an affectionate smile. BWE Gothath, Luffy said pointing towards the door, and I want you to meet Tabo too. Fire Fist, Shanks exclaimed, not in the least bit surprised. Good to see you again. Ace stepped forward and bowed to Shanks. Thank you for everything you did to help my brother and I. Dahahaha. No problem. I'm glad it all worked out, Shanks replied, dropping Luffy. This is Sabo, Luffy said excitedly. Thank you for everything you did for my brothers, Sabo smiled. Again, no problem. I've heard about you, Sabo. Pity you didn't become a pirate though, Shanks chuckled. Luffy, Nami screeched, hitting him over the head and disrupting the conversation between Sabo and Shanks. Why don't you explain how Ace is alive before poor Makino has a heart attack? Luffy looked over to Makino, who had tears streaming down her face. I'd never thought I'd see this again. Ace lowered his head and bowed to Makino. I'm sorry for all the trouble I caused you, Makino. Makino choked on a tear and ran around the bar and wrapped Ace, Luffy and Sabo in a huge hug. I don't care how, she said sobbing, but I knew the three of you were meant to be together like this again. The four of them enjoyed each other's embrace for a minute more before Makino stepped back and slapped Luffy. You three need to get going over to Dayton's. Your grandpa Garp just happened to visit yesterday. She began to shoo them all out of the old bar. Go on, go on. No matter what you three have done, those two will enjoy seeing the three of you together again no matter what. We'll be back soon, Makino, Shanks, Luffy yelled while walking off. You haven't smiled like that for a long time, Shanks said, glancing down at Makino, who had a fond smile from ear to ear as she waved the pirates and the revolutionary off. Neither has Luffy, she whispered. Ace kicked a rock as they walked up the forest road, his hands as deep in his pockets as his mind was in thought. Images of the minutes before his death fluttered through his mind like pages in a book. The words Garp said that day in particular resonated through his mind. I have no sympathy for criminals, but family is a different story. What would Garp say to me now? Luffy, have you seen Grandpa since my execution? Ace asked. Not really, Luffy replied. Sabo? Ace asked. I haven't either. He's going to be so surprised, Luffy chuckled. Think again, a booming voice said from out of nowhere. The three brothers' eyes almost literally popped out of their heads with fear, as their grandfather began to throttle them without mercy. Idiot grandsons, making trouble for the Marines. After all I've done for you. We didn't do anything, Luffy screeched. As he was getting his life pummeled out of him, Ace noticed that Garp had the biggest smile he had ever seen on him, stretched across his face, yet he was acting almost exactly the same as he always used to. However, as much as he tried to hide it, Ace still saw the strayed tears that fell down from his grandpa's eyes. Luffy's crew looked on with horror. Whilst the three got beaten, Sabo and Ace laughed whilst Luffy got the finishing noogie. Luffy rubbed his sore head and pride, whilst Garp started walking back towards Dayton's house. Go find some food, you brats. Dayton's rules haven't changed around here. Brook, Nami, Chopper and Usopp all looked towards Luffy. No pigs, they all yelled in unison. Sabo and Ace gave them a confused look. We don't want to relive that madness, Usopp cried. I still smell like boar, Nami sighed. At least you weren't stuck under one's rear, Brook said with a cringe. Ha 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 ha, how about a crocodile then? Ace asked. Miat. Luffy drooled. Dayton was not impressed. Why had that old geezer come to visit her now? Hadn't he caused her enough trouble over the years? She sat on the ground drinking sake, trying to think of a way to get rid of him, when he stood up and walked out on his own. Weird, is he leaving? He came back a half hour later, his eyes dark. What were you doing? She asked. You'll see, stupid old man, treating my home like his personal palace. She continued to think of ways to get rid of him, until her train of thought was interrupted by the loud calling of her name. Dayton. We brought meat and a surprise. Why are you back here, you brat? She screamed, sticking her, go fight some. No way, the little brat. She slammed the window shut and locked the door. We're coming in, Luffy exclaimed. What are you doing, boss? Dogra asked. Nothing, go away. Dayton yelled, covering her eyes. Oi, Dayton. Why'd you lock us out? Let us in, Luffy demanded. Magra looked out the window and gasped, Ace, Sabo. Dayton sniffled and wiped her eyes, and slammed open the door. What do you think you brats are doing here? She was cut short by the three brothers launching themselves at her in a vicious hug. Get off me, you brats, she yelled, but she couldn't stay mad, and she couldn't hide the huge smile that had spread across her face. Where has Garp gone off to? Sengoku barked at a young marine. I'm not sure, sir, the man replied. Here I am, living out retirement as an inspector general, and I have to come back as a temporary fleet admiral, because of Garp's grandsons. It has been a tough few weeks on all of us, sir. Things were bad beforehand with the new Pirate King. But since the knowledge of Fire Fist Ace's return was made public, the Marines' full forces have been summoned and they're all terrified. The nobles have become more distressed. The general public are in chaos and pirates have become even more active. Only those brothers could do this, Sengoku sighed. I'm far too old for this. Go find Admiral Kobe and escort him here. Yes, sir. This is the next generation's problem now. Within an hour, Makino, Whoop Slap, Shanks, his crew and even Trafalgar Law had come up to the mountain, for the party. They feasted on the crocodile the brothers had caught and almost everyone was drunk by the end of the night. Of course, Garp was not impressed with all the pirates present, especially Shanks. However, for this one night he turned a blind eye. Once everyone had fallen asleep, the three brothers left to go visit their old treehouse. They lay out on the roof and stared up at the clear night sky, blanketed with an array of stars, just as they used to many years ago. An ASL flag once again rippled in the wind. I wonder if any of the traps we set still work, Ace pondered aloud. A few, Luffy chuckled. I checked. They stayed up late in the night having arm wrestles, talking and reminiscing, but after a while Sabo began to realize just how much he had missed out on. I wish I could have spent a few more years here. Well, you did leave earlier than you said you would, Ace teased. Why don't the three of us go on our own adventure, just us? I have a few things to organize first, as does Ace I'm sure. But Luffy, it'll also give your crew a break for a while. Sounds good, Ace said. Luffy agreed. Then in 6 months, we meet back here. Luffy and Ace both nodded and smiled. Ace then pulled out a bottle of sake and winked. I stole it from Dayton again. He laid out 3 small red sake cups and poured the alcohol into each one. We might not always be together, but as I said once before, our brotherhood will always be with us, wherever you are, whatever you do. We'll always be bonded together, to brothers, Ace finished off, lifting up his drink. To brothers, Ace and Sabo both repeated as they lifted up their drinks and drank, reconfirming their bond once again.